you for being with us this morning, members of the Transport Committee, the staff, and we look forward to hearing from our submitters today on the public transport plan. I must say it's been just absolutely fantastic to see the level of engagement and thought that people have put into this. It's really helping to shape what I think is going to be a positive future for public transport. So with that all said, I'd just like to draw on Api to guide us safely into this hui with an opening karakia.
Hati e mauri ora. Nā reira, e tuake nei I raro te maru tō tātou matuitarangi e mihi kawana, e mihi mai o hā kia koutou katoa. Ko hui mai nei I tēnei ata I tēnei rangi. Nā reira, e te timana, mātina kanu te mihi kia koe. Me te whānau tae mai, Linda, o waka ko tei, kanu te mihi kia koe te whaia, tēnā koe. Ngā kaimaihi o tēnei kaunihera, Bryce Russell, kia ora korua, koutou rā. Nā reira, te whānau nei, committee members, councillors, kanu te mihi, kanu te aroha kia koutou I tēnei wā. Kia ora tātou, ki noi tātou, let us pray. Honore kororia ki te atua maunga rongo ki te whenua whakaro pai ki ngā tangata katoa. Hanga e te atua nākau hau ki roto ki tēnā o mātou. Whakatuangia te wairua tapu hei awhina, hei tohu I a mātou. Mahi katoa ko I praiti hoki tō mātou ariki. Āmane. Kia ora.
Dear Little, thank you very much for coming all that way to be with us. And another special welcome to Nick Black from the Bay Airport. Thank you for being with us. I don't know how many of us around the table you know, but I do hope we all get a chance to introduce ourselves to you over morning tea and through our some good news obviously in the public transport context vis-a-vis the airport. To celebrate as well. So thank you for being here. I now need to just go through the standard housekeeping. This meeting is being live streamed on Council's Facebook page and recorded for viewing at a later date on our YouTube channel. In an event of an earthquake, drop, cover and hold something near to you, like a table leg or the person next to you's leg. If the shaking is long or strong, and it's all strong, when shaking subsides, leave the building through the nearest exit and we walk along Dalton Street and up through Tiffin Park that I walked down this morning up to Cameron Road. I'll invite you in for a cup of tea. Evacuation, if an emergency alarm sounds, immediately evacuate the building through the nearest exit and proceed to the assembly area, which is on the corner of the grassed area under the trees, on the corner of Dalton and Vortier Streets, and emergency exits are clearly signposted as I've just pointed out. Are there any apologies?
Apologies from Ian Emerson and Daniel Hedifin.
Right.
And from Tanya Kerr.
Any other apologies? Could I have a mover to accept those apologies, please? Thank you, Councillor Van Craig. Have we got anyone else? I'll second that. All in favour?
All right.
Against? No, that's carried. Now, conflict of interest declarations. Just to note, it's not a conflict at all, but we do have, and I'm grateful for it, and welcome Councillor Taylor. I should have acknowledged you on the wall over there. We do have our local authorities that have, helpfully submitted and by Napier and Central Hawke's Bay, and it's an inherent part of the process. There's no conflict there. They're representing the public interest that we all serve and entitled to speak as well as be represented on this committee. But are there any other conflicts of a different nature, of a personal nature, financial or otherwise, people wish to or should disclose? No, thank you. We now just need to turn to the minutes of the last Transport Committee meeting. You can cast your minds back to 21 February. Someone be willing to move that they are a true and correct record of the minutes of that meeting? Councillor Butto, thank you very much. Could I have a second there, Councillor Price? Okay. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? No, that's confirmed. Right, I think that's the formalities over for the beginning of the meeting. We're now going to turn to the hearing of submitters, and I'd like to welcome everyone from our communities who've come along today and taken the time. I noted a moment ago before some of you arrived that we are hugely grateful for and impressed by the depth and level and nature of the engagement in the public transport plan. Public transport clearly matters to people from across a range of different parts of our communities, and getting that really practical feedback about route names and route numbers and where they go and how they interact and what times they go and how accessible they are for less mobile parts of our community and the pricing implications. It's all incredibly helpful. So we thank you for being in our midst today. The way this works, and I'll probably say this again after the lunch break, is that each submitter that's asked to speak gets 10 minutes, and you get to use that 10 minutes in entirely whatever way you wish. But it is 10 minutes, and it's a firm time frame so that we can get through everyone fairly. We've read everyone's submissions, and we can go back to those, and there'll be a staff report on them. So you don't have to read your submission, you can speak to it, whatever points you want. And if you would like to leave a couple of minutes for questions within the 10 minutes, that can mean that if there's issues in our minds that we want to put to you or discuss with you, there is an opportunity for that as well, but that's entirely up to you. So without any further ado, I think the first submitter is due to start at 10:10. So
Yep, but first we need to...
I knew there'd be something I'd forget.
Sorry, resolve to receive and hear them all
Oh, do we do that
That
now
should be-
rather than later?
at the beginning, so...
Okay, all right. There's a recommendation that we receive and consider the hearing of submissions on the public transport plan and receive and consider written and verbal submissions, social media and remix feedback received on the draft plan. Do we have a mover, please? Councillor Van Beek, thank you. A seconder? Come on, thank you very much, Mayor Little. All in favour?
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried. All right, our first submitter is Jude Henderson, blind, low vision. Jude, welcome to our table.
Thank you. We're
At the front.
At the front, you're in charge. The next 10 minutes, the floor is yours. I'm hoping Leanne or our
Timer here.
governance team, so we're in your hands.
thank you. So yes, Jude Henderson. So I've got two submissions today. The first one I'll be reading out is from Blind Low Vision NZ, so formerly Blind Foundation. We've had a few name changes, so you might know us as a variety of Royal New Zealand Foundation of the Blind as well. So Blind Foundation was a name that we've changed from to Blind Low Vision NZ. So I've been with Blind Low Vision for 19 years in a variety of roles, the latest one being as a rehab instructor. So my role is to go out with people, walk the streets, in a capacity as a rehab instructor, nothing else, and use public transport as well. So you've all got the submission, so I'm only going to read a summary of that submission today, and if there's any questions after that, that's fine. Blind, deaf-blind and low-vision public transport users face significant accessibility challenges compared to sighted individuals. The RNZFB board asserts that all public transport users, regardless of their vision status, should have the right to travel independently and safely. The lack of accessible public transport leads to reduced independence, higher unemployment rates, limited recreational opportunities, and increased social isolation for these individuals. Many rely on taxis, which are often not designed with their needs in mind, creating further disadvantages. Issues such as taxi drivers' refusal to carry guide dogs and inadequate audible signals on public transport exacerbate the problem. Blind Low Vision NZ aims to encourage feedback from users, develop solutions for improved accessibility, and advocate for better training and awareness amongst transport operators. They also call on government bodies to commit to accessible public transport, improve complaint processes, and ensure that all transport information is accessible. The Clearing Our Way guide aims to enhance accessibility in both the built and digital environments for those with vision impairments.
Thank you, Jude. We've got plenty of time for questions now, which is great. And I think we're all acutely aware of the challenges presented to the community you're representing by all forms of transport. Now, have you yourself, my question, you said you use the public transport service. Looking at it through the lens you've just described, if I can put it that way, how do you find our bus stops, the ability to get onto buses, the ability to find buses, bus stops, that sort of thing? In practical terms, how could they be improved, do you think?
So we spend a lot of time with our people that want to travel on the bus, giving them training. We've had some wonderful response from the bus service at different stops, so we can practice with clients getting on and off the bus, knowing what to say, when to say it, where to sit. A lot of those types of things can be quite difficult for our users. So I think that there's a safety issue as well around our users just feeling safe riding the bus. Knowing where to sit is really difficult when there's lots of people and often sitting in the wrong place. All these bags and people not wanting to move over. The other issue is probably if there's any removal of the cash system will be very difficult for some of our users who maybe don't use the technology or are unable to access it, or they don't pay their top up, or they can't use their phone in a hurry. Sometimes they need to just take some time to use it with VoiceOver, especially if you're going to change to a new system where you're only using your phone instead of a swipe card. That's going to be a bit of a challenge to some of our users. But yeah, on the whole, sometimes we've had feedback that because you have to flag the bus, the person hasn't noticed that the bus is coming. Maybe they've got a hearing loss as well. So by the time they've flagged the bus, it's continued past. It's just the little things like that that make transport travel quite difficult. And knowing when your stop is coming up, being able to have that conversation with the bus driver to remind you, like we encourage people to get on the bus and say, I need to get off at stop 25 by the warehouse. So if they don't voice that, they may not realise that they're coming up to their stop. And if the bus driver gets busy, they may forget that that was what the request was. So it's just a matter of communication when they're on the bus as well.
And before they get on the bus, if I were to look at your Clearing Our Way guide, what would be 2 or 3 practical ways that bus stops could be better designed so that you can find them, use them, knowing the bus is coming, that sort of thing?
Absolutely, having a bus stop pole. You've got a lot of bus stops that are just painted on the ground, so they're informal bus stops.
Right.
So having something that a person can detect, whether it be the cane or the guide dog or just visually, and then maybe having some large print or audible bus stop arrangement on that post would be really helpful as well.
Other questions?
Adam?
You live it.
Yeah, is there any system anywhere in the world where blind people get on a bus and have some sort of app that tells them where they are and when their stop's coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's quite a few out there, things like Blind Square, and I think MetLink is quite good down in Christchurch. You can have that audible where they're telling you what
Yeah.
bus stop is coming up.
We
So
don't have
that's-
that here.
No, so that's really helpful to be able to know you're arriving at bus stop, whatever. Just like a metro system would be
Yeah.
really great to
It
have
would
that.
tell them when the buses are coming as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Maybe, Martin, we could look into something like that, how that works.
Yeah,
Yeah, audible bus stops and also it's like being in a lift, you're coming to the second floor,
Yes.
but in knowing what bus stop you're coming to would be great. An announcement
Yeah.
would be great.
yeah, well, Jude, thank you, because one of our policies is to actively engage with groups exactly like yours as to the whole experience of bus stops, fare structures, customer experience, etc. So we need to continue on that journey, and the more you can bring to the table to help our staff through that, the better.
Yeah, it's been great communication with Russell and Bryce on that.
Martin, I've got a question. As a student, I grew up in a country where there was lots of public transport, very good. And when we saw an older, as a student, as we saw an older person milling around, and they would ask us, when is the bus coming? And then we would say, well, it won't be long because the bus stop is already here, the pole is already here. I can't imagine that we actually don't have actually bus stops as such as physical, a pole with information on it, preferably electronic. What's the percentage that actually you have encountered that actually haven't got that in place? Because a person that is visually impaired, just by standing by the pole, would be an indication whether that person wants to be picked up. So have you got sort of data on that? Have you?
No, I don't. No, and I don't know what that's like in Hawke's Bay, but I do know there are places that I have had clients where there is no bus stop pole to indicate. I think it's mostly those informal bus stops
Yeah.
where, like, even when I think the one down from Thackeray Street, just down from us, there's no post there. So it's just those informal ones that are very difficult to identify. But we have in the past liaised with the bus service and said, look, if you see such and such with a guide dog, or if you have such and such that is at that stop on that road, could you please stop? Could you ask your drivers to stop for that person, because they're not going to know that the bus is coming. So that's been really helpful for certain people that we've clients. Yeah, so it is about the communication. And they have done that. Yeah.
Well, look, Jude, that's coming up towards the end of your first 10-minute slot. Do you want to put your other forte hat on and speak to us for the Napier Disability Awareness Group?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I've been chairing the group for over 10 years now, and the group's been around for probably a good 15 or more. It was the Napier Disability Advisory Group, but we changed that a few years ago to the Awareness Group. We thought that was a better fit. And we work with a lot of agencies and community support groups in Napier. And coming together every month to discuss issues like this is really important for us. And it's been great at our meetings that we've had Russell and Bryce and the team and Napier City Council that sits alongside us come to those meetings as well. So I've just again got a summary of the submission that I've put in. The Napier Disability Awareness Group submission emphasises the importance of consumer user feedback on the RPTP, highlighting the need for equitable access to transport services, particularly through the Total Mobility Scheme. The scheme, while beneficial, faces challenges in affordability and accessibility for all demographics, especially as the population ages. Our submission discusses the financial burdens faced by individuals with disabilities and the need for alignment of total mobility costs with living expenses. The Total Mobility Scheme in New Zealand supports individuals of all ages with disabilities, including children and working adults. Currently, 17% of New Zealanders live with a disability. Among children aged 5 to 14, mental health issues and adapting to routine changes are prevalent, affecting 5% of this age group. For adults, physical disabilities are the most common, with nearly 10% affected, followed by sensory at 5% and cognitive difficulties at 4%. These challenges are often correlate with ageing, as mobility, vision and hearing decline over time. It also addresses the isolation experienced by many disabled individuals and the importance of community engagement and support. New Zealanders perceive public transport access negatively compared to other facilities. Disabled individuals report feeling less safe at home and in their neighbourhoods at night compared to non-disabled individuals. Financial stability is crucial for overall well-being, but living with a disability introduces extra challenges and costs that hinder workforce participation. The transport disadvantaged include individuals who are least able to access basic community activities such as work, education, healthcare, welfare and shopping. This group encompasses children, the elderly, people with disabilities, tertiary students, individuals on low incomes and beneficiaries, those unable to drive or lacking vehicle access, and residents of high deprivation neighbourhoods. Clients are concerned about inconsistent charges for the same trip, feeling that they are unfairly billed for a driver's travel from another area when using a taxi. There is a call for transport providers to adhere to the Total Mobility Scheme rules and protect vulnerable clients. Our submission also calls for improved communication and training for transport providers to ensure sensitivity towards disabled users. Regions are addressing insensitivity towards disabilities among bus drivers by incorporating training with CCS Disability Action for both current and new staff. And our desire is for the Hawke's Bay Regional Council contracted providers also receive appropriate training, including those in service provision such as taxis and companion driving. Overall, we advocate for a more inclusive and accessible transport network that meets the diverse needs of the community, including communication formats such as easy read, braille, symbols, sign language and large print that are readily available to everyone in the community in a timely manner. Thank you.
Questions from members of the committee? I'll kick off with one. Over what time frame would you say you've had experience with our public transport system? Particularly, I'm interested in the issue of driver understanding and driver awareness.
So there have been clients, particularly through the Disability Resource Centre in Hastings, that have talked about being left at a bus stop or not being able to get onto the bus or not being quick enough with getting their card out, or the bus driver not waiting until they've been seated to take off.
Yes.
That's often an issue for people with mobility difficulties. One time when I was riding with a client, the bus broke down in Taradale, just past the intersection, and there was no real conversation with those that were riding on the bus for about 10 minutes because he was on the phone, obviously, to the provider and trying to work out what to do next. But there wasn't any communication with those sitting on the bus. So my client and I decided to get off and walk back to where we had come from because it was just easier than waiting for the next 20-minute bus. I think it's all around communication, is just because our vulnerable clients are relying on trust and people giving them the right information in a timely fashion. People do feel vulnerable riding on the bus with students, other people with mental health difficulties that are riding, talking to them. It's about riding safely.
Has there been any improvement?
I would say there has been, but I think there's still some work to go. We're still getting people coming in to the centres saying that they've had a bad experience. It's not all the time, but it's fairly often. And some around the size of the wheelchair. There's a weight issue with one of our clients, probably more with the weight of the motorised wheelchair that can't be taken on the bus, and about the driver not being able to get up and help the person onto the bus because of safety and health and safety and things like that.
Now, just my last question, you've dealt with some of the experiences where we've got public transport, but we've got two councils here represented where we haven't got public transport other than Total Mobility in Central Hawke's Bay. You refer to, for example, community trusts being run in Wairoa where there are people with disabilities that are getting isolated.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you think there's a good place for that community trust approach?
Absolutely, I think it's a very isolated group, especially for some of my clients with blind low vision, just getting around and about in Wairoa or coming to access, they use the health shuttle, which is wonderful, that comes down to the hospital, but it does mean that for a lot of our services, for any of us, we're all travelling to Wairoa as well, but then they have a difficulty accessing other services like attending meetings and their shopping and the doctor and things like that.
And in practical terms, how do you think we can get that off the ground most readily, using trusts or groups or, your type of agency that's...
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I know that some of the staff from the CCS Disability have submitted on the community transport from the symposium, and I think that's a wonderful way for Wairoa to have a bus service, because I really feel for your population there in all regards. Same with down in Waipawa, Waipukurau, Otani. There's a real lack of ability to get anywhere.
Other questions from councillors? Councillor Van Dyke.
Just a quick simple, it was a good discussion going so far. So it looks like I hear through your both submissions that there actually is a time, actually quite time sensitive. Buses are time sensitive because we've got time. And so the drivers are sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. What can they do? I drove behind a bus yesterday and said, please give way to the bus. I reckon we should go past, please. And actually, once again, where I come from, if a bus puts an indicator on, then gets the right of way. So that already in itself would actually then all of a sudden a driver knows that when they pull out, they can pull out, and therefore actually maybe can spend more time with those patrons on the bus that need a bit more time to get seated or get through the door or do the payment. So that's maybe one way that actually we can help out, so that we actually take that time constraint out of the picture for the driver. So that's maybe something we can think of.
Because I think, like, when we ask about, total mobility, can you get on the bus independently by yourself? And if the answer is no, then they've got to use total mobility if they can't get on the bus. But if they just had maybe someone who could help them on the bus, they might use the bus.
Hey, look, thank you, Jude. Time is up. I just wanted to note we did have another submission from CCS Disability Action Group you referred to, with suggesting we appoint a community transport lead to try and get some of these initiatives off the ground. So that's what you meant, that's what you're referring to. You aware of that submission?
Oh, yes, I am. Yes.
Okay, well,
and I know that they're going to talk to that. So
That's
I'll leave
great.
that to them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for being with us and representing the community that you do.
Thank you very much.
Mahi. We now want to hear, if we can, please, from Kate Avachiva. Kate, if I pronounced your last name incorrectly, probably, but my bad. If you would please come and join us, and thank you for doing so.
Where?
Oh, Robert.
Just moral support.
Yeah, moral support. Welcome, Kate. You heard my explanation of how this works. You've got
Yep,
10 minutes.
sure.
Feel free to use it as you see fit. Your time starts now.
Thank you. So Robin and I represent Napier City Council at the moment, and we are strongly support the direction of the draft regional public transport and welcome the opportunity to contribute and to speak to our submission. In particular, we support the overall vision for a public transport system that it is safe, accessible, and contributes to the reduced driving and lower emission. We also support zero emission buses that they've been introduced from 2025, and that would be a prudent step forward towards our joint climate goals. Full step change in services with more direct routes, higher frequency, and extending operating hours to make public transport a real alternative to private cars. Trialing new services in growth areas like parklands, Mission Hills, and riverbanks with trial period of at least 12 months. We also support the airport connection, that it is vital for residents and visitors. Investigation of commuter rail options, including inter or intra-regional connections, and use of advertising on buses that's literally aligned with our community well-being policies like smoke-free and alcohol.
So just the key recommendations, I guess. Obviously, we're generally very supportive of the proposed plan. The increase in frequency, and particularly in the airport, and making sure that those services align with the peak times of operation at the airport, not necessarily the peak times of operation for the rest of the network. Obviously it has to be a relevant service. More bus stops in the CBD, and I'll acknowledge that that's something we are already working on with the team to try and provide a little more relevance and a little more convenience to those who are actually using it as a commuter service, and encourage those uses. Doing whatever we can collectively, I guess, to avoid fare increases that would potentially see a decline in ridership and decline in consistent use of the service as well. Aligning future developments with areas of intensification for council. We've recently enabled quite a lot of the city to have a higher density of residential, and we've tried to focus that around key transport corridors, and supporting that with the enhanced services will be, hopefully a win-win for both aspects. And just keeping up this engagement so that the service remains relevant to the community it's serving. Thank you. A bit more for you.
So, and I would like to dive into more context of why public transport is important for Napier. Napier has a population about 62,000 people and is expected to grow by about 6% over the next decade. And I would like to emphasize that we have aging population, and nearly 30% are expected to be over 65 by 2033. Also, equitable access is a concern, and residents without cars already report difficulty moving around the city. And according to our 2024 social survey, which found that 30% of those who doesn't have any car think public transport needs some major improvements. And as a fact, private vehicle use dominates, which worsens emissions, safety issues, costs, and congestions.
So just to finish off, obviously, we're going to do what we can to support that vision, and we will continue to work with the team where possible. But we don't deliver the transport service, but we can certainly support it and enhance its use, aligning our infrastructure asset renewals and investments with the public transport needs. And it's obviously very good to work with the likes of Blind Low Vision and the Accessible Napier groups to understand what they need as well for accessing stops. And as said, we've already kind of made some really good steps in integrating public transport and land use, but there's obviously still quite a way to go on that. And then coordinating that capital investment to make sure that the work we're doing is supportive. And supporting any bus-led initiatives to increase that third-party revenue share and where we can do that, and maybe even sort of coordinating campaigns to work with the infrastructure we've got and the assets that you guys are engaging through the contracts as well. So just to close, it's obviously we're very committed and very aware of the benefits of having a reasonable and reliable public transport service. We've got a lot of parking issues, and while our congestion's not at the levels that some of us European types are used to, we don't want to get to that point. And obviously having real alternatives that are a proper choice for users is the key for that. So thank you very much. Probably got about 6 minutes for questions, have we?
Oh, look, that's great. Just touch on, it is that partnership. The infrastructure, the bus service is only as good as the infrastructure that connects with it, particularly for the communities we just heard from. There's a mention in your submission about a CBD location. There's another submission I read that it would really lift the profile of public transport if we had a real sort of hub like Christchurch does. I've heard or read somewhere there's some talk of making the bus station by Clive Square some sort of public transport hub. Is that something you can...
Yeah, I can cover that off lightly. It's not any formed policy, and there's no sort of capital investment approved by that, but Council have asked some of the officers to investigate what the options will be there. And that's underway at the moment. We've got some engineers looking at possible configurations and how that would link and support the service. So we've been working with the team and some consultants to see what opportunities are available there. I think there's probably still a need for stops at this end of town, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the hub.
Any other questions from other councillors? Councillor Barrow.
Thanks for that, and also thanks for the support you're showing towards public transport and the document. You've talked a little bit about making sure that bus services and public transport remains agile to go into areas of further expansion, that type of thing. Are there any other places you would like to see the document tightened up or changes made to it, or are you generally pretty pleased with it?
I think we're probably in support. I'm not sure if there's anything specific that you're referring to there, Councillor Barrow, but we're aware that it's an ongoing process where this current plan is a real significant improvement from where we were a few years ago, and I don't think the team are kind of going to just then sit on that one. But obviously we're in a position where the plan itself can't be financed in its entirety anyway, so there is going to be a piecemeal improvement, and I think that also gives opportunities for a bit of monitoring and adjustment as it goes forward. So we're just keen to see how it pans out and how we can, I guess, encapsulate some of those improvements in the contracts that Regional Council enter into over the next couple of years.
Got time for one more question, Councillor Van Dyke.
Oh,
Councillor Price first.
We'll share.
Oh, mine will be very quick. Should funding become available for My Way, would you support that?
I knew it was going to be a Patsy question. Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, we have seen some really good outcomes, and we do know it was an expensive per capita or per rider cost, but also there were certain parts of Hastings community who got some real benefit out of that service. So I'd certainly, as an officer, would support that.
Very clear, yes.
Yes, got that.
Okay. Just quickly, I think you as a city, the same with Hastings, you actually have a really important role to play in all of this. So I hear words like enhancing its use, growth of public transport, user pay, further expansion, affordability. The only way I can see personally, there is only one answer, is actually we need to make this an option that people can't go past. We actually need to fill, need to get patronage. And I believe that's not actually through making the road smoother. I think we need to make the road harder for those who actually, as it said in your submission, for very short travel times use their car. We need to stop that from happening, and I think you have got the power to do that. We, as a Transport Committee, haven't got that, but you as a city have got that. And I think you need to start thinking about how can we make public transport a first choice over the car? How do we do that? And it's not hard to do that. You only have to go around the world to actually figure that out. And I think that's where your place is, and no doubt we'll come along and come with you on that journey. because then we actually can be able to penetrate public transport in areas where they are not now. But if you get good occupancy, then at least we can pay for a better service. But I think also for the gentleman on my right-hand side, the health of our population, as you have talked about climate health, but also personal health, will improve as well. There are so many benefits, and I've been on this now almost 6 years, and you hear me on this soapbox every time I get a chance, and here I am again. Thank you.
So the question was, you agree, don't you? The answer is yes. And I'm sorry, but we have run out of time. I knew that Councillor Van Beek was going to do that. I'm delighted he did, but we do need to try and stick to questions. And we'll come back to the deliberations. I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said, Councillor, having said that. Our next submitter, thank you, Robin and Ivor. We're going to have to let you go now and get on with the day. Meanwhile, if you just go away and close Emerson Street, please. Good morning, Glenys. Thank you for being with us today. Did you hear me talk about how this works earlier?
I've been and done it before.
Well done.
So I know, kind of. Talk for about 10 minutes, then you ask questions.
Well, the questions are within the 10, so use the
yep.
time as you see fit. You're welcome to sit if you prefer.
No, I like standing up, then I am over top of you.
The time's
I'm going
up.
to give you all a clap because you've actually got buses coming through Clive, Whakatu, Mangatiritiri, and through to between Hastings and Napier. So thank you so much for that. That's what I talked about 3 years ago, before Cyclone Gabriel, sorry. I would like to talk about the bus shelters. It shouldn't be just a sign, but a proper bus stop. When I'm driving through Clive, there is 2 bus stops, one on either side of the road by the BP. They do provide some shelter. They need to have space for people with mobility chairs or things so they can get in. They should have some solar lighting there so that at night time, if people are getting off the bus at 6 o'clock in the winter, they're not stepping out into the dark. They should have information panels on them. They're up to date. No point having something that's 10 years old up there. It should be kept up to date with the times. There should be seats, room for a mobility scooter. I was reading about bus shelters. They should have bars between the seats so that the sleepless can't sleep there, homeless can't sleep there. They should be visible. There was a bit in the paper today about the bus shelter they've built. Oh God, now I can't find it. People have built, they got Mitre 10 involved anyway, and they've built a bus shelter for kids at Estar, and it's bright orange, so it's seen, it's visible. So that would be a big thing for me, visibility. I'd like to talk about bus safety. I think there should be CCTV on the buses. The bus drivers should be trained to de-escalate any situation. They should know first aid, and they should all do customer service courses. Like when I worked at the Blood Donors, we did a thing about being a good host, and that's looking after your customers and listening to them, and just that whole thing about being, you're the bus driver, so you're in charge of those people. You've got to give them a safe journey. You've got to keep them safe. You've got to be helpful to them. Give them information if they need it. I'd still like to see cash, because how are kids ever going to learn about money unless they handle cash? It's too easy just to zip zap. The money is just magic. So if you have cash and you've earned your money from doing something for mum and dad and got pocket money, and you use your cash to buy a bus trip, you're learning all about money and what it costs and how much things are worth. So I think money is still important, cash money. I'd like to see a lot more promotion about going on the bus. Lots of people can't afford to go away on holiday, so have a vacation at home. Take the bus to Napier, have a deal where you get the bus and you go and play Par 2 golf, or you go to the aquarium, or you go to the museum and you get free chips at McDonald's or something. So it's a whole thing, a deal on the bus with your family, and you have that. You could go over to Hastings, you can go to Splash Planet, you could go to the art gallery, you could go to Cornwall Park, Frimley Park, lots of places you can go as a family on a bus trip for the day, and for low-income families, that would be really attractive, I think, to go and take the bus. You're getting the bus trip, which is fun for the kids, and it means mum and dad can sit and enjoy the trip. They don't have to be steering and controlling the little monkeys in the back. They're just sitting enjoying the bus trip and talking about it. There'd be something else to do, like people travel in Wellington on the bus, on their trains, and they look at the scenery, they read their newspapers. Why can't we have a promotion like, you know, look at all the beautiful scenery we've got. You could have, enjoy this on the bus, enjoy this on the bus. All the scenery that you can see while you're travelling on the bus from Napier and Hastings or wherever you're going. Got that. I think make it fun, family discounts. Education, that's a big thing. I worked in an early childhood centre, and we would quite often, we were on Pakawhai Road, and we would take our bus from Kiwi Kids and we would go into town to the library or to the supermarket or to the art gallery or the supermarket. And we had a whole thing before you even went on the bus. It was about, what are you going to be like on the bus? Are you going to shout on the bus? No, that's rude. Are you going to say hello to the bus driver? Yes, that's courtesy, that's being polite to people. And you're going to use your manners on the bus. You're going to sit on the bus. You're going to sit at the back of the seat because there's no seat belts. And the teacher's in charge and they press the button when it's time to get off. And we always say thank you to the bus driver when we get off. So there's all that education about being on the bus, being a good bus passenger. And when we got off the bus, we always called out thank you to the bus driver, because that's just manners. So if you can start educating children how to be sensible on the bus, and for teenagers how to keep themselves safe on the bus, take your cell phone, sit behind the bus driver if you're not feeling safe, ask the bus driver for help, and if he's trained up, he should be able to help you. He's a responsible person, he's someone you could trust. So there's all that bus safety things. If you're making the bus stops lit up at night, you're not going to get people hanging around vandalising them. There's all ways of working around things, and perhaps even putting in some free Wi-Fi in places. I've got a son who lives in Korea, and the last time I went to visit him, I got there at 9 o'clock at night. I had to then catch a limousine bus out to Daejeon, which hasn't got an airport, so I had to travel by this bus. 2 hours travelling, got off the bus, and I was there. I thought the bus took 3 hours, it only took 2, so I was there an hour early. So then I could use my Wi-Fi on my phone, call my son to come down and get me. And because they had Wi-Fi there, you know, you felt safe because you could get in contact with him. So that's another thing. And even like, it was a well-lit place where I was waiting for him to come, and I felt safe. It's a different culture over there. It's a safe culture. But we can make things safe for people here to use the bus and feel safe using the bus by having well-lit up bus stops, Wi-Fi, shelter. You know, we've got a lot of people in New Zealand that are really bad with asthma and things. You're expecting them to stand outside for 10, 15 minutes and blowing a gale. Well, they're not going to do it, are they? If they had a shelter that protected them from the wind and the rain, and they could get shelter at it, they're going to be more likely to wait the 10 minutes for the bus there. So I just think well done, and keep on going, because the more we can make things attractive and positive and teach children how to use the bus, it's a life skill. My son didn't get a licence till he was over 30 because he lived in Auckland and he caught the buses everywhere or walked, and he went to Korea and they had buses and trains everywhere. And a lot of people don't have cars, so they rely on the public transport. And I think we can do the same here, make it a useful alternative. And I just found I haven't got the statistics, but somewhere it said that bus transportation are one of the safest forms of travel. So less people get hurt in buses and bus travel than one of the other things. So there's something to promote. It is a safe way to travel. Mine have seat belts, but it's still a safe way to travel. So, and well done getting the buses coming through all those places. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Glenys. There's some absolute pearls and gems in there. Just to note, question to you in a minute, but for the staff, could we get some advice in the deliberations report as to whether our policies or our contract with the service provider deal with or enable us to deal with some of the issues that have been raised around driver training, customer training and safety and that broader set of experience.
I have got the thing. I thought it said warns community, but it's warms. School bus driver warms community. Well, that was the bus driver saw the kids in Ixtal standing out in the cold waiting. So him and Mitre 10 and they got together and built the nice little bus shelter. And it's bright orange, so it's visible.
Any other questions for Glenys? We've got 1 minute.
I've got a comment. Am I allowed to make a comment?
No.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. You can save those for deliberations.
He's the chair, so.
I'd like to say hello to Marcus. It is Marcus Barrow, isn't it?
It is.
I taught you when I was at
What was he like?
Seven
There's a
Dwarfs.
question.
Very clever. Ask him to sing a Christmas carol in German because I worked at Seven Dwarfs and his little friend there, Fred and what was her name, the teacher?
Thank you, Glenys. We better wrap it
They
up.
could speak, the little girl could speak German, Dutch, English, and she would go between all three, and Marcus knew German. So him and his little friend would speak German all the time, and then at Christmas they were singing Christmas carols.
Thank you very much indeed for being with us.
Embarrassing for you, isn't it, Mark?
And it's all live stream.
All right. We better stop it there. But Glenys, well, I've asked the staff for some advice on the issues you've raised and making sure they're integrated in our experience. Thank you.
Letting me come and stay.
I think you've taken the time to do it. Peter Grant. Here he is.
You're a good boy.
Thought I saw you walk in. And by the way, Councillor Taylor, I'm sorry I didn't get you to, couldn't find a time for a question from you last time, so you're first next time you put your hand up.
All good. I'm just aware that I'm a big face behind the submitters, so I've turned my video off and I am listening. Yeah.
Kia ora koutou katoa, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here today. I'm Peter Grant, and together with Whai Alexia Puna, who unfortunately can't be here today, we co-chair the Napier Ahuriri Age-Friendly Advisory Group, previously known as the Positive Ageing Strategy Advisory Group, PASAG. Also with me today here is Bruce Carnegie, who is also representing Grey Power, and Rachel Kawana, who provides us the support from the Napier City Council. Age-Friendly Ahuriri Napier has representatives of different agencies and community members who ensure Napier is a positive place to grow old. We are very proud that Napier has now been recognised as an age-friendly city by the World Health Organisation, and that we are part of New Zealand's Office for Senior Age-Friendly Network. Our submission focuses on ensuring the new transport plan moves Napier in step with our commitment to becoming more age-friendly. First, we acknowledge the plan's intention to improve the accessibility of all Napier people to our bus services. That's welcome news, because we know how essential good public transport is, particularly for our older residents. Many older residents of our city could be described as transport dependent. And nearly 1 in 5 Napier residents is over 65, and this number is growing. And a point from our 2024 age-friendly survey for Napier, transport scored at the lowest category, indicating that the bus and bus stops were not easy to reach and use in their Napier neighbourhood, and mobility issues, health concerns or financial barriers being contributing factors. In relation to the bus routes, we feel we simply don't have enough information yet to make any substantive comment. We understand that there is still room to slightly move these, and we urge the council to ensure that when routes are confirmed, further consultation is done, especially in communities with high numbers of older residents. Something, for example, we are aware that in the current draft is that 2 Napier senior villages that currently have bus stops right outside their entrance see these being moved in the proposed changes. And that's of concern to us, of course. And when we talk about walking distances, please remember that short is not a universal definition. What's walkable for one person can be a barrier for another. A 400-metre walk to a bus stop might sound reasonable on paper, but someone with a walker or using a cane or carrying groceries, a purse or a bag, it can become a real challenge. Also, in some areas where we have high concentrations of social housing and people facing economic hardship, even small transport barriers become large ones, and basic needs can be missed. So in confirming the routes, we need to look at distances and obstacles in detail and identify how we can best manage these. We'd also like to see more clarity around interchange stops. Will these be properly sheltered? Will there be seating? Will there be real-time signage? How long will people be there between connections? Will the bus drivers make it clear that the stop is an interchange stop for a different bus service? These points are crucial, especially for those using truck routes to reach places like Hastings or the hospital or going shopping in the city, etc. We're keen to stay involved and would like to and would welcome ongoing engagement when we consider the bus routes before they're firmed up. Cash payments. We also support retaining cash payments for now. The 2023 service showed 64% of over 60s still use cash. That tells us it's simply too soon to go cashless. We do support encouraging the B card or an alternative, and we agree there's value in promoting digital tools over time. But let's recognise that some older people live week to week on their pension. They may not be able to afford to preload a card, may prefer to pay trip to trip, or may have access to online tools. This is a generational shift, just like phasing out of cheques, and it needs time, education and understanding before it can be fully incorporated. We recommend a slow transfer or transition into any new payment plan with regular consultation to identify and address issues as they occur, and with a formal review in 5 years, and then cash payment possibly phased out then. Total mobility scheme. From our understanding, the total mobility scheme we would support continuing at perhaps a reduced level, as it can be vital to those who are unable to access the bus. We agree that the scheme should only cover the transport cost, not the companionship time, and there is a need to investigate alternatives or other free services that may be supported. We're also very concerned about some stories regarding people who are falling through the cracks. For example, ACC clients who only get help to travel for medical visits, but not for essentials like shopping for groceries. Or people temporarily stood down from driving who don't qualify for transport because they're not out of action for 6 months. We'd encourage the Council to work with ACC and other agencies to ensure those gaps are catered for, even if it's only on a temporary basis. As an to wrap up, as you fully appreciate, Napier's public transport isn't just about moving people from A to B. It's about keeping people connected with friends, whānau, healthcare, shops, and their community. As an age-friendly city, Napier has a responsibility to ensure that older people can move about safely, affordably, and with dignity in getting them to where they need to be. In summary, we're essentially supportive of the intention of the changes, but are seeking clarification and involvement in the further development of the services. Thank you for your time today. We look forward to working with you and helping you shape transport that works for us all. Thank you for seeking our input to this very important aspect of ensuring that Napier becomes even more age-friendly, and we are happy to try and answer any questions or take on board any comments that you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. That was an absolutely fantastic submission. I'm wondering if you'd be able to send in or leave a hard copy of the written, just for our records. And if I could ask the staff to approach Jude Henderson and get her written submissions, it just means we've got exactly what was said. My question, can you just go back, the survey you mentioned, was that 2023 survey that rated Napier the lowest? Can you just go back to me?
That rated transport?
Yeah, repeat to me the point you made about the survey of the Napier experience.
2024, yeah.
And what did the survey find as to Napier, exactly? The finding you read out from the survey about Napier, could you just repeat that, please?
Yep, transport scored as the lowest category, indicating that the bus and bus stops were not easy to reach and use in the Napier neighbourhood, with mobility issues, health concerns, or financial barriers being contributing factors.
Well, clearly some work to do there. Any other questions? I think we've got about 1 minute for the submitter.
I've got one question.
Councillor Van Dyke, please proceed.
The age group that you represent, have you got any data on the growth in that in the years to come?
No, but we know that, not specific, but we know that within the next few years, the people with gold cards are going to outnumber the people under 21.
Thank you. Great question. Thank you, Councillor Van Beek, and thank you very much to Peter and your team for coming along and presenting to us and taking the time, thought, care and attention to do so.
Thank you very much indeed.
Our next submitter is Maria Neville-Foster for the Catholic Diocese of Palmerston North. Can't be right, is it? It is.
See.
Yes, it is. Ah. I'm hoping our Ministry of Education representatives are here at the moment. Anyway, do carry on.
Inga mana, inga reo, inga kārangatanga maha, tēnā tātou katoa. Tuatahi me mihi ki te mātua i te rangi tēnā koe. Kia rātou mā, kia kua whitu rangatia, haere, haere, haere atura. Huri noa kia tātou te hunga ora, tihe Māori ora. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Knockfearna te maunga, ko Mag te awa, ko Asgard te waka no Limerick, Ireland aho. Ko au te tumuaki o te karati o Ngāko Tapu. Nā mihi nui ki te hui e tēnei rā. Thank you very much for allowing us to be with you today. My name is Maria Neville-Foster. I'm the principal of Sacred Heart College in Napier. And I have with me today, first of all, apologies from Bishop John Adams at the Palmerston North Diocese. In his place, we have Liam Greer, who's the General Manager of the Palmerston North Diocese. We have George Rogers, who's the Principal of St. John's College. And we have Lucy Leighton, who is a parent of Sacred Heart and an old girl of Sacred Heart College. Thank you, first of all, for the work that you've done on the public transport review. We really appreciate the opportunity to speak to it today. Sacred Heart and St. John's College are special character colleges that are operational under the jurisdiction of the Catholic Diocese of Palmerston North. Currently, 141 students travel from Hastings to Napier every day to get to Sacred Heart College, and 120 students travel from Napier to Hastings to access St. John's College. At present, those buses are being funded by the Ministry of Education. However, the Ministry of Education have informed us that those buses are under review. So for this reason, we've made a submission because we're very concerned about getting our students to and from school safely every day if these buses are defunded. They are not currently. So the main areas we'll speak to is safety of students, routes, capacity and congestion. I'm going to hand over to George Rogers, Principal of St. John's College, who will speak to the first 2 points.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou. First issue that we would like to present for you to consider is the safety if these proposed changes go ahead. I've got 3 points. Point one, with the changes, the concentrated large number of students due to the potential changes, would, for example, have approximately 140 girls out here at Dalton Street and 70 students on Karami Road at a single bus stop, which would significantly increase the risk, overcrowding, delay and conflict. It would also certainly lead to absenteeism, given that those bus times prior to 9 o'clock is 40 minutes, post 9 o'clock they're arriving every 60 minutes. Second point, past experiences have shown the congregation of students with other schools has led to disorder, including fights requiring police intervention. These changes not only compromise student safety, but also place undue pressure on public transport employees and potentially passengers as well. In Dunedin last year, where there was a death of a student at a bus stop which had security there, the Otago Regional Council established new criteria to ensure that every security worker undertakes de-escalation training. Also, during those key school hours, at the beginning of the day, post, there was also increased police present there as well. And I'm also assuming that with all these buses, with all these students, there would be increased CCTV on all those buses. Point three, additionally, requiring students to walk distances through the central business district raises further safety risks, with students no longer being picked up outside our respective schools and having to walk to the public bus stop. We will reduce our responsibility and care to carry out our duty of care for our students. In regard to the proposed routes, at this stage here, we have no services going through Pakowhai, where we have a number of families. If we consider the route from Taradale, Green Meadows, the closest that I can see that we would have boys dropped off would be 1.2 kilometres from school. Given we've got a boy arriving next year in a wheelchair, he would have to then make his way from that distance to our school. If we consider the students who are at Dalton Street, there's a 27-minute walk up to Sacred Heart College, and given what I've just said with disabilities, that becomes a challenge. Given injuries, that becomes a challenge. Inclement weather, that becomes a challenge. And then there's the practicalities of sports practices as well. I'll now hand over to Maria to talk through the capacity and congestion and touch on affordability.
Thanks, George. So with 140 girls travelling from Hastings, that's the equivalent of 2 extra buses that would be required in the morning. And with 120 travelling from Napier to Hastings, again, another 2 buses required. And that would only be during school time. So just thinking about staffing, etc., in those periods. Having this many students on a public transport route adds stress to those who already access public transport, as well as stress for the students themselves. This may lead to people reverting back to driving to work rather than taking the public bus transport, which increases your traffic problems in both cities. We can see that in Bayview, when that public transport system has not been able to cater for the number of secondary school students required to travel into town, having had their ministry bus funding defunded, the public bus routes have not been able to cater for those kids, and having students left on the side of the road is not something that we are comfortable with. This also adds to them missing school, but also leaves them in a very vulnerable space and place as children, needing to come to access education. In relation to congestion, On these proposed routes, some students will need to be driven to their closest bus stop, which will add more congestion and traffic in both of those areas. Some parents will choose to drop off and pick up their students instead of have them access public transport, which increases the volume of traffic outside both schools. And if you're aware of Sacred Heart College, it's got Napier Girls right next to it as well. So with Napier Girls and Sacred Heart Collection Point at the same place on the hill, an increase of cars and traffic at this point will result in safety issues for residents. It's a very high residential area, so it'll cause a lot of issues and concerns. And finally, in congestion, just looking at footpaths on the walk up from Dalton Street up to Sacred Heart, Shakespeare Road has one footpath on one side of the road. It's quite narrow. There's hundreds of Napier Girls walking down. You're adding 140 Sacred Heart students and other students walking down. It is quite unsafe, so that would be something that would need to be looked at. Additionally, just for me to finish, the cost of paying for public transport for some of our families is something that they will just not be able to afford. We are having to support more and more of our families through St. Vincent de Paul just to meet their basic needs every week. And so that's a major concern for us. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Liam Greer, who's going to briefly speak to
So the diocese's position on trying to provide a financial solution to this, we derive our income from two sources. One is parish levies and one is from our own investments. As you probably know, parish levies are dropping year on year, so our income's dropping, our expenditures going up, so we're running a year-on-year loss. The diocese is a separate judiciary entity legislated under New Zealand law, so we've got no association whatsoever with any other diocese or any other rich Catholic entity as the Germans or the Italians, as much as I'd like to. So we're on our own. If you look at our charities, if you go onto the charities website, you will see we run a surplus. That's what's the word I'm looking for?
misconception.
Misconception. We get funding from the Crown to maintain our schools, as do state schools. So we get money comes in, but it can only legislatively be spent on the schools. We can't use it for operational. So we post a surplus. If you look at our core financials of just the diocese, just our income and our expenditure, we're running a significant year-on-year loss. We're not in a position to solve this problem financially, and I'm happy to make those financial records available if that is material in the decision making for members.
Do you want to add?
Yeah, just to add as a parent perspective, so I've got a daughter in year 9 who travels over from Hastings. We drive her from Havelock north to Hastings to catch the bus, 2 bus services that go into Napier every day and back again, in long association with the school, many family members at both schools. Obviously, from a parent perspective, that this is a real concern for all of the issues that have been raised here today, but it is quite a pickle, I think, for the community as well. And we understand that the Regional Transport Committee and the Regional Council aren't responsible for government policy decisions, and this policy review puts you in a really tricky position as well, and I guess providing what we're really presenting to you as a backup option. Our great wish is that we still get that Ministry of Education funding. The Bishop's written to the Minister, has requested an audience with the Minister. We're doing everything we can to advocate, and if you've got any other suggestions about that, that would be wonderful. But if we're failing getting that funding secured, then we just really need to put on the table that this is not a simple issue of just chucking on a couple of extra buses. It's got some really, as we've discussed today, some quite wide-reaching ramifications. And there's a real equity and access issue there for our students that is really concerning. As you know, can't help with my other hat on, our NCEA level attainment levels are starting to drop again in the Hawke's Bay region. We need to be doing everything we can to encourage engagement and discourage truancy and absenteeism, and these schools are doing a really good job with that. So that's just a perspective to add here. And thank you very much for listening to us today, and I hope we've still got some time for some questions.
Well, just on that, you've got a minute or two, so I just need to take the time, Lucy, to bounce straight off that. This is a fantastic plan, but it's all subject to funding, and the issue you've raised is a classic case of the education sector essentially falling through 2 stools. I mean, our schools, we can only provide what we can fund. Our funding's been cut. The ministry at the same time is applying an utterly slavish and pedantic approach to its criteria that's affecting rural communities as much as it's affecting urban communities. What can we do in partnership? We've written to the minister, you've written to the minister, we got talk to the hand. Okay, your problem, they're in fantasy land around this. How can we partner, do you think, to actually make an impact here and not leave hundreds of kids stranded and unsafe?
I guess my first response would be that maybe that is what we need to do. We need to partner a bit more collectively. I mean, we saw the Prime Minister yesterday speaking about the 5 factors that are going to lead to productivity. The first thing he talked about at quite some length was educational achievement and outcomes. So maybe we need to think about a way to do this more collectively and more publicly.
Maybe all the regional councils.
Yeah.
I think there is a move to do this, actually, coming out of Nelson to get into this.
Yeah, it's just keep pushing back and keep advocating and keep your voices out there. It's really important that they're aware and that we don't give up on that aspect. And if we have to work together to ensure that public transport is suitable for our students, then it's about partnering in that space and really understanding the complexities of what that looks like and helping to work together on that.
But if there's something that we can do collectively definitely from a Catholic schools perspective, but more widely with maybe the Principals Association or other industry bodies with the regional councils, that could be something worth looking into.
Thank you. Look, we have run out of time, but this is unfinished business, so can we please stay in contact on this? And as I say, I think there is a national initiative emerging out of Nelson on this very issue at the moment. All right, thank you. Thank you very much to all of you, George, Kate, Liam and Lucy. Our next submitter is someone who needs no introduction, but we're again very grateful to have your input and the input for the council you represent, Kate Taylor. Councillor Taylor, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes starting now.
Thank you. The first 10 seconds.
I'm sorry, I wasn't aware you were with us.
The first 10 seconds of my introduction will be handing the baton over to Mayor Walker to present our submission to you today.
Fantastic. Lovely to have you with us, Mayor Walker. I hadn't realised you were amidst us as well. Go, Kate.
Tag team, that is. Kia ora koutou katoa. Lovely to kind of be able to see you all in the room. Thank you for the time to present our submission. Look, to be honest, our submission is fairly focused and practical and builds off information we have shared with the RTC in the past about the data we've collected, the surveys we've done, and the strengths of support for the public transport trial connecting Waipukaro through to Hastings. And that is for me to reiterate our support for considering this, and would also add fresh perspectives into this as well, that actually what we're seeing in the education space is that we've got parents who are engaging in a user pays way for their children to get on private buses to be able to go to Hastings and to engage in education. So we have got a growing number that are engaging in how we connect through to Hastings, is also exploring how that might be paid for. We would encourage the committee to think about how we continue this initiative in the regional public transport plan, but continue to consider that in how we fund it, there is still a really important further conversation to have with the Central Hawke's Bay community about that. When we did our survey back in 2022, we saw really strong support for the need for public transport between the district and the centre of the region. And the additional thing is the demographic information that we have about Central Hawke's Bay at the moment, where as many as a quarter of our households are gaining their primary income from employment around the Hastings district. And so we've got education as a need and a draw card, we've got workforce as a need and a draw card, and the practicalities of connecting us through to the city. The cost of living is hitting the pockets of our community in Central Hawke's Bay particularly hard at the moment, and that is another reason for us to continue to support this initiative. And let me just check my notes. And continue to thank you for the work on the community transport schemes and the support of the Total Mobility service. This provides really important service connection, but the support of the community transport services, the vans and the other volunteer services that are connecting transport needs is an ongoing conversation that we wish to continue to be part of. So that's not 10 minutes. That means there's good time for a chat. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mayor Walker, and thank you, Councillor Taylor. Can I just kick that off? It's great to see the support for
Back to you, Martin.
for the express service from Central Hawke's Bay up to Hastings.
If you're talking to us, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
That may be an advantage.
Whole room full of politicians, and it's you and me, Alex.
We're just working that out. Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yay. I was just saying thank you for bringing your community's perspective to our attention as ever and always. The issue of the express service from Central Hawke's Bay, which I agree is long overdue, has always hinged on funding. The survey that you put up shows the degree of support. It's going to be viable. It will work. But there are equally responses in the survey I see from paragraph 25 of your submission that those supporting respondents wouldn't support an increase in rates. So that's the conundrum. Would this be a case for, in your view, some regionalisation of the cost, acknowledging the benefits to the region of getting workers into Hastings that are actually, that economy is dependent on? There's benefits that go outside Hawke's Bay, outside Central Hawke's Bay, that would mean, rather like Affordable Waters, we can actually get this off the ground rather than just a complete user pays rating system. What are your thoughts about that?
Look, I think that we should consider all options. I actually think we should consider what is the information we put back to the Central Hawke's Bay community that says this is what it would cost, non-funded or funded, in the different ways we could fund it, and actually engage genuinely in that community conversation, because there's a lot of assumptions. Those submissions are based on some assumptions about what people think it might cost or what they think it might add to their rates. Actually, there is a need for a good, robust, evidence-based conversation about that, and I suppose that would be the next step. If we were to do this service, how much would it cost? And when we model out what user pays compared to benefit and potentially ratepayer options, then we need to work that through and have that conversation.
Very good point, because we are moving to a sort of uniform annual charge approach for public transport, which keeps it at a relatively consistent and affordable level for everyone. So, other questions? That was a comment, I think I shouldn't have done that. Other questions? Please, we've got plenty of time. No?
Oh, good.
So how's the total mobility service working out in your district? Is it?
It is used by about a couple of hundred people, and which is growing. And but I would observe that it's not necessarily completely well known actually that service exists. So I think there is a communications piece about their place in the public transport system and actually who is eligible for it and how they can connect with it. Our local provider does a really great job, but in the wider public understanding of what that service is, I think there's a bit more we could do on the communication about that.
That actually came up, and as part of the promotion, our local regional councillor had it on his Facebook page, and there were so many people saying, "What is that? We don't have it." So there's a real, I say ignorance in the nicest possible way, there that people just don't know that system exists or how they can use it or how it operates.
Any other questions? Anything else you want to share with us?
No, thank you. Appreciate the time and appreciate that this topic we've now submitted and discussed a number of times. Really pleased to see the position in the draft plan and continue to support it, and thank everyone for their support of this initiative.
Thank you.
Ngā mihi.
Let's make it happen. Thank you very much, Mayor Walker, Councillor Taylor, for being with us online. Now, our next submitter is Mr. William Stacey. We have William Stacey. Would you like to? Now, William, you weren't here. Please come up to the table. I don't think you were here when I, just please do come up so that you can speak to your submission. What's that? That's all right. If you could bring them up, we'll work through that. William, my name's Martin Williams. I'm chairing this committee. There's a range of councillors and advisory members here. The way it works is you've got 10 minutes to speak to your submission, within which, if you want to allow some time for questions, it's entirely up to you how you use your 10 minutes. We would have seen your submission, but the floor is all yours and your time starts now.
Thank you. These are some old bus photographs.
Looks like it's not much changed.
What? I can't stand this one up. So. Right, I'm a bit of a bus fanatic, as you can see. I grew up in a place called Waiwatu in Lower Hutt, which was 10 minutes walk from the Woburn railway station, so quite used to using public transport. Used to take 22 minutes from Woburn railway station into Wellington and back. And once you got into Wellington, there was a very good bus service to all parts of Wellington, which I used to use now and again. One of the main reasons for me submitting is I'll be 75 in October and have to sit a driving test. And hopefully I'll pass it, but if I don't, then I'll be stranded in Clive. And the planned bus services look very good if they're on the hour, because at the moment it's just in the morning and at night. It's a bit of a struggle to take me about 10-15 minutes to get to the bus stop where I am, living in Clive and Farndon Road. The Central Hawke's Bay one, it's quite interesting. I like to go for a drive down there, but it's a bit expensive, and they're trying to keep the Ks down on the car. My experience in buses, when I shifted up to Napier in 1979 with the Government Audit Department, and for a while I lived in the hostels in Hastings. I used to catch the bus over to work and back each day. And when I shifted to bought a house in Eaton Street in Taradale in 1982, I used to catch the bus to work and back as best I could, because you don't have to worry about parks and all that. And when I was made redundant in 1995, I quite often would catch a bus into town just for a break. I quite like long bus trips, which is not the subject of this, but Nimmins used to run trips. I went down to Wings over Wairarapa a couple of times, and it's so much easier going on a bus, trying to find a park. The bus goes straight there and back. And been up to Auckland a couple of times on the bus. Seeing some people like the convenience of cars rather than buses, and I guess it's a matter of trying to convince people that they should be taking the bus rather than using a car. I like sitting back and letting other people do the driving, and I can see things from a bus that I can't see from a car, obviously, because you're up higher and you're concentrating on your driving as well. So I suppose what I'm coming to say is that if you do make the plan changes, then I will use the Clive service and would look at going down to Central Hawke's Bay just for a break, sort of once a week or something, to make the connections. Any questions?
If there's any questions for the submitter. It's great to hear that the improvement in the Clive service will be, well, I was just going to say, William, it's great to hear that the improvement in the Clive service will be or benefit to you. We've heard a lot from that community about the importance of that. So,
Yes.
are there any other questions? If not, is there anything else you wanted to share? Councillor Butto?
Thanks for sharing. And you've talked a little bit about trying to get more people on the bus and encouraging people to use it.
Yes.
We've talked earlier today with some disability groups around, some of the things that operationally can be done within the buses and with the drivers to help them be encouraged to use the bus.
Yes.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
You've already got the buses that Neil, haven't you? And you got the buses, got the spaces as well for the wheelchairs. That, I guess it's, up to the driver, I guess, to have some training and helping, because sometimes they sort of sit there and let the people get on themselves, and other bus drivers will actively get up and pick up the walker or the wheelchair and bring it in and off.
Yeah, Little.
Yeah, cheers, William. Are you a believer of cash or card?
Oh, I don't really mind. It's just these days they don't carry much cash.
Yeah.
And I quite often get caught out when I go somewhere for a gold coin donation and I haven't got a gold coin. So probably, you mean just the FPOS card or
for the bus?
Specific bus card? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I suppose in a way, card's going to be the thing. Because I have to go to the bank and get $20 worth of coins now and again, which is a bit of a nuisance.
That's William, having the benefit of both options, having been able to wave the wand or pay over the cash if you've got it.
Oh, probably wave the wand, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. As I say, it's you keep running out, you go to the library and do a bit of photocopying for $1 or something, and you don't feel like using your FPOS card for that. And that takes up your change.
Yes. All right, well, thank you very much, William. It's been great to hear from you. And lovely to see your props,
yeah,
the displays, and to recall the history of where we've come from. And I actually think, Councillor Van Beek, we have made some progress.
This is the Ard Motor Company.
Right.
About 1933, they went throughout the North Island in service buses, service cars.
Thank you very much, William, indeed, for sharing some of your day with us. Our next submitter is Mr. Stuart White. Stuart.
That name for years.
Ah, yes. Hi, my Hardy Mai.
Kia ora.
If you'd like to introduce us to your submitted team, Stuart and Malcolm Marae.
Kia ora, kia ora.
And 10 minutes, the floor is yours. Leave time for questions if you wish, or fill it up as you see fit.
O tēnā koe te tia mana, Councillor Williams, ko koutou rā, ngā councillors a kai wainganui tēnei hearing. I roto I te manaakitanga o tātou nei kāinga nāna hi te timata nāna I homai te timatanga nāna homai te mutunga a nāna nei I homai ngā mea pai, te kaupapa kei moi a tātou, being the Hawke's Bay Regional Council Transport Strategy Review. May I just introduce myself as Marae Apitu. I'm here on behalf of not only Stuart White, but Stuart White is also representing Te Tai Whenua o Here Taonga. That comprises, and I represent in their voice and advocacy for Te Ngā Marae within the bounds of Ngāti Kahungunu area region. We're one of 6. And I guess the thing that, the key thing here is that we know that there are certain constraints and limitations that are placed on this particular process. We've come here to look at ways and means in terms of sowing the hip of a whole of community approach, realising too that most of our constituents are pretty much in the social deprivation, social dependency. I just want to leave it for this point in time and hand it over to my colleagues. I may want to introduce yourself. Yeah. Okay.
Kia ora, i te rangatira. Ngā nui kia koutou katoa. Just introducing on my left, Kane Koko, who's also the Deputy Chair of Te Tai Whenua Heretaunga and the Chair of Te Raya Marae at Bridge Park. At Pakepak, sorry. So look, I guess one of the constraints that I want to recognise tonight is the construct of time, which doesn't always fit well into a te ao Māori world. So we'll try and fit the submission into the 10 minutes as allocated. Just a mihi to the Regional Council for allowing us this opportunity to provide an oral submission today. We're really grateful for the opportunity. My submission today is in two parts orally. One is around just sharing some research with you. And then the second one is, I guess, giving a helicopter view with regards to the options available for the new services that we're proposing. So if I can start with a reference to the New Zealand Transport Agency and Public Transport 2013 around how public transport benefits New Zealanders. Public transport contributes directly to economic growth and productivity by providing easy, fast access between people's homes and where they work, play, study and access community service. Research shows public transport increases productivity between 3% and 23% over other modes such as the private car. These productivity increases benefit individuals and businesses through raised income. They also benefit central government and local councils by generating more tax revenue and rates. I also want to refer to a research article that was generated in 2012. The authors were Gerald Fitzgerald and the Fitzgerald Applied Society. The report finds that rural areas that are comparatively transport poor areas are more remote, have higher proportions of people aged 65 and over, higher proportion of Māori residents, lower levels of education attainment, the social impacts of poor access to transport in rural New Zealand, smaller household sizes, lower median household incomes, lower levels of access to telephones, the internet, etc. Importantly, the rural areas with poor access to transport have higher levels of socio-economic deprivation as measured by the New Zealand Index of Deprivation. Based on the analysis of the available data on transport availability and the case studies, the report concludes that access to a motor vehicle is essential to mobility among rural people. This mobility is essential for getting access to the goods, services, activities and opportunities that rural people need to sustain themselves. Those with poor access to adequate transport are likely to experience multi-dimensional disadvantage. More generally, accessibility is said to be about the life opportunities open to people, and that access to such opportunities is a necessary condition for social inclusion and social justice. I reference Farrington and Farrington 2005. For Chapman and Ware also, accessibility is essential in participation in society. Accessibility is a fundamental basis of economic and social interaction, whether for work, education, health, shopping, recreation or other purposes, and is a function of the spatial distribution of activities, their size, quality, character and their ease of reach. Social exclusion is therefore synonymous with ongoing lack of access to important life opportunities, such as employment, education and social service. Such lack of access is also what is meant by poverty as captured in the welfare economist Amartya Sen's notion of capability deprivation. Just want to conclude the research part of the submission to say that the latter could also result from certain groups or individuals not being consciously included or considered in a policy, program or activity. An example of passive exclusion might be the scaling back of a rural bus service, which then prevents people without cars from accessing their places of work, which then leads to unemployment and consequently other forms of deprivation. So I just wanted to share that research data with you. And I take it that you have all had time to read our written submission, which includes a proposal to create new routes which will benefit the communities of Hastings, of Bridgepa, of Pakipaki, of Omahu, and of Flaxmere. So this is a life-change, a transformational submission that we are presenting today. At the top end of this is creating a small transport hub in Flaxmere. To ensure that our Flaxmere residents can be connected to our rural communities such as Bridgepa, Pakipaki and Omahu, but also that they have a direct opportunity to travel to Napier. Currently, they have to travel to Hastings to get to Napier, which has an overarching cost to our communities, to our climate, and I'm sure that our councillors present here today are aware of those costs. So the proposal today that I'm submitting to councillors is to create routes that will link our communities of Pakipaki that can then travel through to Bridge Pa. That can then, from Bridge Pa, you have two options: travel up Stock Road, down Portsmouth Road, and service the outlying areas of Flaxmere to the community shopping centre, which now has a supermarket and all the social services available. That service then can then link to a proposed route that we're asking that all the buses that are currently planned to go down the expressway, that we propose buses during peak times, that is early morning, lunchtime and late afternoon, can actually be rerouted through Flaxmere, the Omahu catchment area into Waiheke. So those proposed routes, we believe, will increase the capacity for our whānau on all those areas, including our urban areas such as Heretaunga, Hastings and Flaxmere, to increase their use of public transport, to increase their use and access to social services, to education, EIT in particular, and reduce the cost of council by running bus services that require people to have to travel from Flaxmere to Hastings in order to get to Napier. So that is our submission, and we are open to any questions. Kia ora.
Thank you very much indeed for that submission, and we particularly grateful for the input of our mana whenua and the tai whenua, your tai whenua in particular, for this kaupapa, because as you've touched on, Stuart, there are real social implications, and we're aware of those. Just on the proposals you put for public transport that might better serve Omahu and Bridge Pa, Pakipaki and the like, would there be an opportunity, as you see it, to perhaps partner with Te Tai Whenua or Heretaunga to get some community scheme going, the likes of a My Way scheme with a minibus or a shuttle that we could collaborate in getting off the ground to make that work? Because the thing about public transport, the fixed route services really only work where you've got a reasonable density of population, and a community trust model is more likely to better serve a rural community. So any thoughts about that?
Thank you for the question. We have considered those options very carefully. In actual fact, our representation today represents our marae based in those areas within our submission. However, I want to also acknowledge the fact that all of the marae, 14 of our marae within the Heretaunga Rohe, support the submission. With regard to your question, we believe that public transport, with regards to what our submission outlines, is a valid option relative to the option you're talking around community, initiatives. We have been working closely with the transport team, with Bryce and Russell, with regards to options that are available to our more rural areas, such as Matahiwi out at Haumona, Waimarama. There are, Kahuranaki, which is pleased to hear there's a Central Hawke's Bay option on the table. But we believe, and we're more than happy to, examine those options going forward with regards to community buy-in around those areas. But I guess in essence what we're saying with regard to this submission is it does serve a much wider community and in fact benefits not just those rural communities, but actually those residents that are living in urban populations that can have access to those rural communities and to Napier.
Any other questions from members of the committee?
Yeah, thank you, Moana. Omahu is quite a growing population. What are the plans of what the size of the community will be? And the second question is to actually, during peak time, instead of going expressway, but actually servicing Omahu and Waiheke, what's the additional time you think it will add to that travel from Hastings to Napier?
Very good question. I might get Mare or Kane to answer the first question about population growth in those areas. But with regard to transport times, I guess that's dependent on what we consider the expressway's capacity at the moment is, given that any given day you can go down the expressway and have huge traffic jams and be congested. And so arguably there may be a saving in times going the other direction. I don't think actually it will add too much time at all. But I do want to emphasise that this is just not through Omahu. This opportunity is through Flaxmere. And really the focus here is around connecting those outlying areas of those other marae into Flaxmere and then to Napier. And I don't think actually there'll be too much extra time added. I'm not even sure, I haven't done the calculation on distance with regards to the two distance, probably a little bit longer through Omahu, Waiheke. But I guess on a good day, if the expressway is operating well, there might be an extra 10 minutes, I guess, onto the duty. Yeah, that would be how I'd answer that. Kia ora.
Well, thank you very much indeed for being with us. I will ask the staff to also advise on the connections between the two Flaxmere routes and the getting to Ahuriri Napier. I had thought that they did interface reasonably well, but I'd like to get some sort of specific advice about that. Thank you for being with us today. Ka nui te mihi and kia pai tō koutou rā.
O tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
Our next submitter is Carol Ann Vanguard, who I think may well be familiar to a number of us. We've been very privileged to have Carol with us in these forums a number of times, and it's always a delight. So thank you, Carol, again for taking more time to speak to our public transport plan. Do you know how this works? You've got 10 minutes and...
This will be my third time to come
yeah,
and
that's
speak.
what I thought. So
I have got...
You're an expert. Fire away. Your time starts now.
Good morning. My name is Caroline Gard. I am here today on behalf of the Voice Group, who is a group of people with disabilities who meet and talk about the challenges that we face in the community. We would like to thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you all today. Firstly, we would like to address the 92-page plan document. Reading a document of this size is a challenge for everyone, especially for those with learning disabilities, vision impairments, and school leavers without qualifications. To prevent discrimination against these groups, it would be helpful to provide easy read and simplified version of future plan documents, as well as any other transport information going forward. We feel strongly that there needs to be better communication about any changes to the transport services. In the past, there have been times where there has been breakdown in communication regarding changes such as the change of bus payment card and the introduction of the My Way bus trial. Please ensure the changes that result from the transport plan are clearly communicated in a different formats so that people don't get confused and upset about the changes that you make. We also believe that the bus service should be from 6 to 9 p.m. This would open up opportunities for the disabled community to access work options that start and finish outside of 9 to 5, and for them to have a social life. We would like to thank you for including disability awareness training, and providing security cameras on the buses to improve safety. Providing driver education will encourage disabled people to access the buses service as their needs will be respected. Also, some disabled people require a support person to use the public buses. We believe there should be no fare charge for the support person. This would be done by adding a symbol to their bus card to identify and support that a support person is required. This is what other areas have adopted. Finally, a suggestion of ours that everyone in the room today should take our challenge to rely solely on the bus for a week. You will then see how difficult it is to fit your lifestyle and work-life commitments in the operating hours of the bus service and go to the locations that you need to access. We are pleased to see that you have provided this important service for our community. However, there are improvements that can be made to the bus service so that everyone can access and enjoy transport. Thank you for your time today, and we hope you consider all that we have put forward.
Thank you so much, Carol. That was a great summary of your written submission. I think you addressed all of the main points you'd raised, that very thorough submission very well. The question I had is actually one to the staff. This issue of a support person, given that our buses aren't exactly full, would it make a great difference to our fare box recovery if we supported that through a policy if we already don't? So that point's resonated with us, Carol, and I'm going to ask for some advice about how that might work. Are there any other questions from councillors? Councillor Van Dyke.
I've got one. Thank you very much for your presentation and submission. Really good. And I really like your great idea. I've got a ball here on my screen. Would you compromise that staff, instead of a whole week have to rely on the bus, that they just did it for one day? You think that would make would you compromise to that, or you would? Okay,
I need you guys to really experience the challenges that the disabled community face. And once you actually step in our shoes and take our challenge and see it, it will be an eye-opener. You cannot close your eyes once you have actually physically seen the challenges that we face.
Totally agree. I see a lot of nodding around the table.
Great riddle, a great challenge to us. Thank you, Carol. We have any other questions? Good morning, Angela. Anything else you wanted to share with us, Carol?
I do hope you guys will take up the challenge and come back to me with some sort of feedback of how you actually find it.
All right, did we hear that?
From now on, every RTC meeting, we come by bus.
Well, I tend to walk in.
Oh, that'll work for me.
I'll need to leave quite early.
No, we're not having comments. All right, thank you. That's a great challenge, keeping us real, Carol. And again, thank you for the community, for what you do for the communities that you're serving.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our last submitter this morning before lunch is Walter Brewstead.
Thank you for giving me or us the opportunity to speak at the committee. Yeah, the topic is the marketing strategy for public transport in Hawke's Bay, and I believe this is missing. One reason is, from my perspective, public transport is treated by all councils in the same way like other public services, water, power, waste, or energy. The fundamental difference is for public transport, it's a service where a lot of people, or most of our people, can very good live without public transport, even if this is not a sustainable way of living. In the regional council, the regional public transport plan, I find goals, objectives, similar to other public services, that they has to be safe and reliable, which is from my point of view not necessary to repeat this so often. And there are suggestions to improve the transport service, but I couldn't find any marketing strategy. Public transport is a public service that needs professional promotion in a competitive transportation market. I have here from this morning Hawke's Bay Today, cars, advertising. This is the competition for public transport. And I think Hawke's Bay Regional Council should face this and develop a public strategy. And the same is in TVs. We see permanently every evening advertising for cars. And the result is that since 1960 till today, till 2020, the sizes of cars increased by about 20%. And I can say we as consumers are so stupid to take this up. This is our competition and the competition for public transport. And we heard this also this morning, there is a lack of information about the service. And this is what I would like to emphasize. One result for us is not such a good result that we have here in New Zealand 900 to 920 cars per 1,000 inhabitants, and we are on the top of the world together with America. And this should give us a little bit to think. Hawke's Bay Regional Council can attract more customers in this with a competitive marketing strategy, and this has to involve a professional marketing company who is doing something. I have here a few points which are quickly can be reached with not much cost. For instance, the collaboration with supermarkets, they are publishing regularly their products, and there could be also information about public transport. Then in all council buildings, there could be billboards with changing slogans and a timetable. And for Hastings, for instance, offering for Hastings family weekend tickets, including vouchers for a lunch or dinner in Napier. One example from Germany is, for instance, they are Sundays with car-free Sundays and during the holiday time. And I think monthly flyers should also be distributed. And in summer, it may be worth to have public transport to our beaches. Another example from Germany is a mobile app that provides real-time bus arrival times for waiting people at the bus stop. And this is much cheaper than what is happening in Auckland, where you have on each bus stop the electronic display, which is very expensive. I know that public transport has problems with funding, and therefore I think it should also be seen as an action in the climate situation. We have, for instance, a tiny flyer from the regional council, and they said, changes you can make, walk, bike, carpool. There is nothing about public transport in there. That means the advantage of public transport in the area of climate change is in a certain way neglected. The increasing usage of public transport would not only achieve easier the national greenhouse gas reduction target, it would also help to reduce other waste, other problems, which are, for instance, the emission from car tires. And this is something which is totally neglected in our public transport plans. And I would like that this should be at least included in the plan, that this is a pollution. And I would like to quote the is a publication from the Imperial College in London, and they emphasize that the reduction of tire wear and tear particles is as important as a reduction as exhaust emissions. And this highlights another advantage for public transport. This is the advantage for rail transport. And I think rail transport should include and is included, and I appreciate that this is now one discussion point in the next future. Our government is neglecting this completely, but overseas, for instance, California and the European Union, they are pressuring the car industry or the tire industry with new regulations. And at the moment, it seems to be very difficult to receive anything, but it's a big advantage for public transport. And the first research from 5-6 years old, they indicated that Australian vehicles emit about 20,000 tons of toxic dust. And I extrapolated this to the New Zealand conditions, and this is for us 5,000 to 6,000 tons of dust, and this is toxic. What the research found at the moment, it's toxic to marine life. And I think we have to do something. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Walter. I recall you raising that issue with us on our wider transport plan a couple of years ago.
Yes, but I would like to see this in the plan under pollution.
As an express issue, we're trying to, because I think we've got a section that's benefits of public transport, perhaps that could be put in there. Look, you've made the most fantastically, I think it was an obvious point, and how did we miss it, about better marketing public transport, and that really has resonated with me, at least. I'm sure it has with some of the other members of the committee, so thank you for doing that. It's that sort of feedback and perspective that makes this process so worthwhile. Are there any questions for Walter? What sort of, my question would be, what sort of marketing, is it social media, is it billboards, is it our regular communications as a
I
council?
would say
Just everything, is it?
the same media where the car industry is also advertising. This is Hawkesbury Today. It costs money. It's quite clear. TV also. On the other hand, there are publications from the government, for instance, which are also in public concern, like drugs or don't drink and drive. So that means, from my point of view, the Ministry for the Environment may also be interested to do to deliver some funding.
Good point. Well, thank you, Walter. That's the bell, and you've used your time extremely well and made a fantastic point, so thank you for being with us. That brings us to the end of the morning session. Could I just take a moment, because it hasn't been acknowledged to this point by me. A number of these submitters have talked about the engagement they've had with the staff. These two gentlemen here have probably worn out 3 pairs of shoes and I don't know how many voice boxes, with the number of meetings they've had right at the coalface with our communities over the last 6 weeks. They've nearly exhausted themselves doing it. And it's just so to be commended. We saw what happened a few years ago in Wellington when they changed all their bus routes. There was hell to pay because people didn't understand it. And they really have taken the time to get people involved and engaged. And it's just a huge credit to both of them. So I just wanted to thank you on our behalf for doing that. And now if perhaps Api could bless our food, we could have lunch and resume at 12:30.
I'll just come over here. Okay.
Here.
Yeah.
Not a good start.
Suggestions?
No.
That's 10 minutes.
It's not me. To know really.
That's organise a whole lot of things, it's not going to work.
So,
Do we have Georgia here?
That's it.
That's a classic too. Does it get better once you have kids?
Do we have any submitters here? All right.
Linda, this is your chance.
No comment.
Maybe Carol's in German?
That's right. You bring it up.
Oh, well, 1:30 is gradually disappearing out the window. Oh, well, stand down, sit down, or something.
So have you had a submitter before comment on the singing ability of one of your committee's members? Or?
Well, I was looking for the standing orders at that point. First time for everything. The Carol's challenge to us was an interesting one. And just for the staff's benefit, a suggestion perhaps of a workshop. Have we got, there's Sean McKinley, perhaps with representatives of each of those, mobile disadvantaged groups or vision impaired groups, just to actually sort of wrestle some of the stuff to the ground, put them all together and workshop with us, maybe in one of the forthcoming meetings. Could be an idea, if that could be noted. She was very keen to come back and do some more with us.
I came up with two ideas today. Glennis, a bus ferry came to my mind. So we have the same with when we do Art Deco Festival. We've got the chap that actually is sort of the poster boy. If you have somebody on the bus that actually, because she came up with some really good ideas, because she is an active bus user, and the courtesy, and so taking bus groups through, I think that's really good, to make possibly education. If you teach kids when they're young, they'll follow that through. So that's another thing that we maybe could do. They actually just take a bus trip from a school, and we have a bus ferry that actually can take them across. Be a great idea. I think also because if you look at all the, and I'm going into a bit of debate here now, but if you look at all the submission, a lot of those fringe groups who otherwise can't just easily grab a car or don't have access to a car, they use public transport. For us to actually, even if our staff would take a day out and go with Carol Ann and take a bus ride, see what she has to deal with, and that actually teaches us so much more than actually an A4 with all the lists on it. It's not a bad idea, and I know you guys, because I've seen your photos at Great Power evenings at night, so you already spent time out of the usual office, but if you could do it during the day, then make it part of your job to actually travel and with those who are affected by this, either partially blind or hearing or mobility reduced. That may be a good idea, and you may pick up things and empathy as well. I'm not saying that you haven't got it, don't get me wrong, but it always works.
A couple of things that keep coming through was obviously the driver training and education.
Yeah.
A lot of the submitters are all talking about security cameras on the bus. Now, do they have them? Have they got cameras on them? Or
They're literally being fitted in the next few weeks.
Right. Yeah. One of the suggestions that I've been really interested in, we'll be hearing about later, is this community transport lead. On page 61. It's been done in the Waikato region. We actually they employ a community transport lead to go, like Wairoa or working with the Tai Whenua or whatever, and getting these other types of adjuncts to the core services off the ground. Just have someone sitting on that space. I thought that was really good.
I've just recently come back from down south, and I was talking to an ex-colleague down in Oamaru, and he's just recently retired. and they've got a community service there going to Dunedin, where they've got a number of cars just available, and they've got volunteers to actually drive cars. So there's actually, there's no cost of driving them, but I thought that was quite a good idea too. And this, whoever they provides the service owns the car, so there was no liability for insurance or anything like that. So I just wondered how that came about. That was quite unusual.
Well, there's a woman down in Central Hawke's Bay who's set up an app, as I understand it. Kate might know more about it. I can't remember her name, but connects people with cars who are willing to drive with people with passengers, who want to get a trip.
I think the only stipulation with this one is that they had to have a taxi licence or a bus licence or something.
Does that ring a bell with you, Kate? That do you recall that? There was an article about it in the paper a while back.
Yeah, it was Tiara Bergstrom. She actually presented to this meeting last time we did it. She spoke about the need for public transport down there. So she's got the Waka Share, I think she's calling it. She got huge response, but I'm sorry, I don't have an update. There's definite interest there, yeah, to do it. User pays, just sharing private vehicles.
I mean, these services need not be any more expensive than the cost of creating the app. The rest of it, so it's just that enabling sort of stuff. And slightly off piece, but in 2016, I think it was, the Global IT Award went to a company in France called BlaBlaCar, where you book your ride. Someone wants to drive from, say, Auckland to Wellington with a trailer to take their daughter down to university with all their stuff, and wants someone to share the petrol, so they'll post the trip, and then someone who wants to go to Wellington will say, I want to do that, and they'll rate themselves as blah, 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 or blah, blah, blah. And it's pretty much how much they want to talk.
That's funny.
So whether they want to sit in the back with headphones on, it's like no blah. And if they just want to blah, 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 the whole way, it's blah, 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 blah. So I thought it was hilarious. But apparently it won the 2016 IT Award globally, I think. So there's lots of models out there. We're filling time, aren't we?
Yeah, we've just had, yes, we've just had.
Maybe
Glenn-
Marcus could sing a song.
Glenn has had to.
This again.
Glenn has had to.
You're never going to escape that. Like come Christmas time.
Oh man, you're on.
Glenn is now unable to attend.
Okay.
So we were waiting for the next.
It was a very supportive submission from Glenn, and the great news being that we've got a bus stop at Sports Park, so fantastic.
Sheriff, I think Dutch and German Christmas carols are probably pretty similar if you wanted to do a duet.
I spreche eine bisschen Deutsch. Das ist gar kein Problem. Eine kleine Tannebaum.
It's backing out big time, yep.
Oh well, looks like we're...
Walter's not here anymore either.
I could share a joke this morning, I heard.
Yes, I think so. Have we been live streaming?
Really?
Yeah.
Is it good?
No, this is actually academic. So, why do zebras look, and if you look at biology and you look at Savannah, why does a
With how this process works?
No, this is my first time.
All right, well, look, we're the Regional Transport Committee. I'm Councillor Martin Williams from the Regional Council. There's councillors from the other councils, including your own here, the Councillor Butto. There are members of our, what we call our advisory members, from Mana Whenua, from Automobile Association, Hawke's Bay Airport, etc., and Te Whatu Ora, and the police. And I've probably missed a few out. And the all-important New Zealand Transport Agency. The way this works is you've got, and we've had the esteemed Mayor Little in our presence too. So the way this works is you've got 10 minutes, and you get to use it how you see fit.
Right.
And if you could leave time, if you wish to leave time for us to ask any questions,
Okay.
that's entirely up to you.
I'll just wait for my computer just to sign in.
No problem at all.
I'll just introduce myself while it's doing that. So, kia ora everybody, ko Eloise Mackay Tokuingawa. I'm a community connector with Hastings District Council, and I have the privilege of supporting our disability reference group on behalf of council. I joined that group early last year, so we're kind of really finding our feet this year. So, and we've got a really what's the word to use? A really cool group of people, and we decided that we were going to do a submission into this plan, and we also nominated somebody called Hamish to do a video, and he's going to talk to what he wants to say today. So I'll just find the video for us, and then I will let Hamish do the talking. Do I just plug that in and...
Hi, my name is Hamish Gilbert. I happen to have Down syndrome, but that does not define who I am. Thank you for inviting me to speak at the Disability Reference Group Commission. I am sorry that I can't be here in person, so I have recorded what I wanted to say. The key points I want to get across is people with disabilities use public transport because they do not have any other way of accessing the community apart from taxis, which are expensive and put that pressure on the total mobility scheme. I already spend $60 to $80 a week on taxis, and that is with the total mobility card. If I cannot access public buses on my way, that cost will only increase. If I can use a bus on my way, then I will. Because I don't have a lot of money, but I cannot get to my workplaces, social, sport, to the library, meetings, activities, by bus, because one, there are not too many buses from Clive, and two, public transport do not operate after 6 p.m. The Myway service, when it was introduced, was a game changer for me. Overnight, the whole of Hastings suddenly became accessible. And now have the potential to look for a flat anywhere in Hastings, knowing that I could access the whole community. I could use my way to get to my swimming, the gym, the library, or shopping, temple bowling, independently. Just like anyone else. I do not think the true potential of my way was marketed to the disabled community very well. It took a bit of time for my family to understand how it could work for me. Independence is crucial to the well-being of people with disabilities. And being able to do things myself, just like anyone else, is important to me. But without a good, accessible public transport, my world only shrink. My way vans service will severely restrict where I can live. And I will have to find somewhere close to a bus route, and finding housing is a big enough issue for people with disabilities as it is. The dropping of the My Way service will therefore usually disadvantage the disabled community and will likely put the pressure on the total mobility scheme if people are forced to use taxis. The Hawke's Bay Regional Council should therefore consider keeping My Way or similar service, perhaps with the volunteer drivers, specifically targeting groups that have transport issues, e.g. disabilities, organisations, elderly groups, grey power, retirement villages. Improvement to the reliability of the vans, plus consistent phone answering will be crucial to the revenue generation and sustainability. Hawke's Bay Regional Council will have lost money every time a temporary van was without a card machine was used, which has happened often. And this will may not have been factored into that review. The temporary vans have also confused the disabled community, reducing patronage. I am very pleased to see that more driver training is going to be done. It is important that drivers understand the difficulties people with hidden disabilities have. And just because someone is not in a wheelchair does not mean they can easily cross the road. I did quite a lot of work with Tasha at the Hawke's Bay Regional Council in when My Way was first established. To feedback some of the issues people with intellectual disabilities have when there is no fixed pickup point. For example, the development of favourite sites. A result was again a game changer. Providing consistent pickup points that greatly improved access for people with disabilities. Driver training in the Sunflower Hidden Disability Scheme could greatly help drivers understand the needs of their customers and improve service on all public transport. The timing and connectivity of routes will also impact on whether people will use a service. I want to be able to continue catching the bus from Gracelands to the Hastings Library and on to Clive. But if these services no longer connect in the 4 to 5 p.m. end of working day time slot, we'll be forced to use taxis. If the My Way or similar service is not available around Hastings, I will again be forced onto taxis and not able to get to the, not able to access the community. If all bus routes cannot immediately or totally accessible, it will be important to communicate to the disabled community which are accessible and very clearly, and to work with different members of the disabled community to define what an accessible bus stop system looks like. The last item I want to mention is topping up of the new Motion Move card. Many elderly and people with disabilities do not operate a credit card, so it is absolutely crucial that a new POP card system has the ability to link a bank account and function like the Auckland POP card, i.e. have an automatic top-up system. When the card drops below a user-defined level, then I don't have to rely on someone else having to top up for me, and can be confident that there is always money on my card so I can get home safely. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Eloise. That's your,
I also have a written version of that if you would like to have a
Right.
couple of copies of that.
so Eloise, that's the time is pretty much up, but was that the essence of the presentation?
That was yes, that was it. We discussed it as a group and we agreed Hamish was going to lead that submission because he, as you can tell, he's a real advocate for the My Way service and it does heavily impact Hastings.
Understand. Now, can you just tell me briefly about the Hastings District Council Disability Reference Group? That's the one question I had. Just is that? Yeah, just tell us a little bit more about that, how it was set up, and what the work you do is.
So we have Councillor Sholem that sits on our group and we've had, we're leading certain pieces of work each year. We develop an action plan for ourselves. This year was transport and housing. As you can tell, it's a very topical point for us in Hastings with the My Way service. We have many different parts of council that come and talk to us. We give good feedback on different elements of council and what's going on at the time.
Right, well, that's fantastic. So it's one of these expert advisory groups that our plan specifically refers to.
It is.
We need to engage with. That's great.
Yeah, and it was important that we certainly had our groups combine and make a good submission to you.
The submission makes some fantastic points, including
really
the own goal we score if we load more into the total mobility.
Yeah, that comes up regularly in our meetings, yes, the total mobility.
So thank you. We don't have time for questions.
No, that's okay. Hamish, I think, has said everything.
I think he said it very, very well.
He did.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Certainly got my head thinking hard about that. So, right.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Eloise, for being with us. Is Georgia Mills with us yet? Oh, okay. Do we have Ronald Wilkins? It appears we do. Welcome, Ronald.
Whereabouts?
Just come and sit up here. And I don't know if you heard me explain the situation.
My wife able to come and sit beside me?
Absolutely.
Right. You need me with the microphone? I have a loud voice.
There's one right in front of you anyway, so that's all good.
Right.
There is people online, so it'd be good to use a microphone.
All right.
Now, I don't know if you heard me explain the process to Eloise just before?
No, I didn't, but I've been before, so
It's a 10
I've
minute.
got everything all prepared. I'll just go straight into it and be open for questions.
Brilliant, 10 minutes, floor is yours.
Right.
Thank you, Ron.
Rightio, so good afternoon. I see Madam Chair's not here, so good afternoon, Madam Chair and councillors. My name is Ron Wilkins and I am the President of Grey Power Hastings and District Association Incorporated. I wish to speak on my submissions to better bus connections. Firstly, I would like to inform you that I had invited Bryce Cullen, Senior Advisor Transport Strategy and Policy, to talk on Radio Hawke's Bay about my issues in general. This was on air 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Wednesday the 7th and Wednesday the 14th of May 2025. Bryce will also speak briefly at my members' meetings on the 2nd of June 2025 at 2 p.m. at Jewett House in Havelock North on Jewett Road. I've also invited him to come along briefly and speak to my Hastings members' meeting on the 4th of July 2025 at 2 p.m. in the Baptist Church Hall, Linden Road, Hastings. This, Madam Chair and councillors, shows our support for these changes in the bus services. Now I get down to my submissions. 1. We, Grey Power Hastings, would like to see and support a bus service from Napier via the airport 7 days a week. Now, Bryce and I have spoken about that, but I still want to be heard. So, yes, I see a great advantage of having this service. You've already got to go past there to go to Bayview. It is so simple for a layman to be able to drive in, drop people off, turn around, go out into Bayview, come back, go in and back. Very logical, very sensible situation. So I believe that that service should be 7 days a week, and that would save people like me on a benefit or a pension $100. It would have cost me to go by taxi from Havelock North out there. We, our members, do not mind waiting for a bus service, so we know you haven't got a direct service from Havelock through Hastings to the airport. We've got to catch a bus at Havelock, into Hastings, wait, then Hastings into Napier, wait, and then there onto the service. Not a problem to my members. All they want is to be able to save $100 or $45 or $50 for a shuttle bus. Very simple transaction. So that's my views on the bus service to the airport. My next one is Grey Power Hastings would like to see and support a bus service from Havelock North via Hastings and Clive, you know, that little village, Clive, to Napier between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. Monday to Friday. So this again makes sense. You know, we live in Havelock North, we come into Hastings, hop on it, and instead of going around the hospital and EIT and Taradale and into Napier, change the route, for crying out loud. Give us another view of our outside countryside, plus it will service the residents of Wakatu and Clive. You know, those poor people are restricted. They either have to go in by car, pay parking, or either don't come into Napier at all. So again, another logical bus service. So even if you don't implement it fully, let's give it a try. Let's try it and see how it operates and what support you get from our public. So that's item 2. Item 3, we, Grey Power Hastings, would like to see and support a bus service from Waipakarau to Hastings during peak periods, AM and PM. Now, I go every 3 months to Palmerston North to what we call a zone meeting. I leave Havelock North at 7 and I hit this highway to Waipakarau, and all it is a bottleneck all the way through from Waipakarau into Hastings. Accidents are there to happen, for crying out aloud. So if we have a bus service, that reduces the number of cars, motorbikes, and of course it gives you a business and a service. So I strongly support and will fight, and so does my Waipakarau Grey Power. I was their guest speaker last Wednesday, and I said I was going to be speaking here today. They said, Ron, please express from us that we will back the service as well and ensure that they get the support from the Waipakarau residents, the Waipawa residents, and the Otani residents to use that service. So please give that another one, a trial run, see how it goes. But let's do something. Let's not talk about it. Let's get it into action and see what happens and transpires. So that's my number 3. Number 4. Now, Bryce has explained to me about the gold card, which is a government situation. All right, so be it. But look, it's so hard for us when we go into Napier to do shopping or to walk along the beach or whatever. But then we've got to catch another bus back quickly to get to Hastings, then another bus to get out to Havelock North. You can't do that and enjoy your day out between 9 and 3. So please listen to me and my members and give that an unusual support for Hastings, because that would be mighty to be able to have that benefit Monday to Friday with the gold card extended to 4, so that people in Hastings, Havelock North, Flaxmere can enjoy your beautiful days in the sunny Napier and support your businesses. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, that is my submission, which I'm proud to have spoken on behalf of my members of Grey Power. I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. The question I've immediately got for you, Ronald, is what was the response you got from our staff when you suggested, for example, a 7-day service that connected through to the airport and back?
You mean from your staff?
Yes.
That's the council?
Yes. When you were
at this stage I've had no response apart from my discussions with Bryce.
Yes.
And
that's what I'm talking about. What was shared with you there?
Rightio then. All right. Well, he's all for what I have emphasised here today, and I know for a fact that he supports what I've all spoken on.
Yeah.
So, that's why I've gone out the extra mile to invite Bryce at our members' meeting in Havelock North and our other meeting in Hastings, and that's why I gave him some airtime on the radio, because that's something that we don't normally do. Yes. And he was very applicable by allowing me just the 2 avenues, because we've now got another crisis in which Grey Power is supporting Hastings District Council on, and that's your water issue. So the water issue is now coming on, so I've asked Bryce if I could pinch his other 2 Wednesdays, and I'm now having the Mayor to come on air and speak about the water crisis where there's the Logic there again, Napier, Wairoa, Napier, Hastings and Central Hawke's Bay join a group and sort out this water issue. So again, she will go on air for the 21st and the 28th, which would have been normally taken up by Hawke's Bay Regional Council, but because it was all the hearings were being held here today, I asked Bryce if we could then put this other urgent issue on there so that our members can support the Hastings District Council on the water issue, which is another serious matter that's come to be. And again, Her Worship and Councillor Sholem are sharing that by coming along to my members' meetings as well. And just briefly explaining to our members, because I've already booked guest speakers, so I've asked Bryce to be very brief on the buses, and I've asked Councillor Sholem and the Mayor to be very briefly on talking about the water issue. But we get a bigger coverage on Radio Hawke's Bay, so that's why I've invited them on air, and the feedback I've had from members, they've heard Bryce and I talking about it on the radio, and we get over 20,000 plus listeners on the Radio Hawke's Bay. So your message is getting out there about the buses. So please listen to what we've said. We are the people, we are the users. Please do something about it for us.
Thank you very much, Ronald. That was very, very clear indeed. We've got 25 seconds left. A quick question, anyone? All right. I'm particularly interested in the point you made about connecting through to the airport for the communities you represent, and I'll be getting greater clarity from the staff about that.
Okay, thank you. And then just tapping it off, I've mentioned to Bryce he's going to look into it, but we would like to do a bit of advertising in your bus shelters. So Bryce will get back in touch with me on that. But just another little toss in there to do a bit of advertising, because it works both ways. You know, we get more members because we're seen out there doing something for the community, and of course it gives you people a bit of money in your pocket for advertising. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, do we have Dee Withers? Or do we have Georgia Mills? No? Oh, that's Dee Withers and Michelle.
A bit of an entourage today, so sorry.
You're all very welcome.
Screen.
Good afternoon. I'm not sure if you heard the introductions earlier on how this all works. We're the Regional Transport Committee comprising councillors of all the councils in Hawke's Bay and advisory members from a number of interested sectors, and we're very privileged to have you in our midst, and you've got 10 minutes. We've read your written submission, and you can use it as you see fit. If you leave any time for questions, we might have a few at the end. So thank you very much, and the floor is yours starting now.
Cool. So kia ora koutou, ko Michelle Tokuingwa. I am the Access Coordinator for CCS Disability Action, and so I'm here on behalf of the people we support through our organisation, but as well as the wider community.
Kia ora everybody, I'm Candice Pearce. I'm one of the administrators for CCS Disability Action here in Napier. I'm also an assessor for the Total Mobility Scheme and a high user of the Total Mobility Scheme as well.
Kia ora, I'm Christine Minacha. I'm the Community Development Lead at CHB District Council, so here supporting this submission with our CHB lens on.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Dee Withers. I'm the Manager for Age Concern Hawke's Bay. I'm here representing the older community and the wider community that we all work in. So in the interest of timekeeping, because we have put in quite a submission, we will be kind of sticking to a script today, supported by a PowerPoint. So we want to start by thanking you for the opportunity to speak with you today and acknowledge the consultation that has been completed so far by the transport team. We have submitted on a number of areas and would like to use our time today to comment on the total mobility scheme and also then focus on community transport. In respect to the total mobility scheme, it is not sustainable to continue completing assessments on behalf of the council. We would like to offer our support to work with the transport team to move to an alternative assessment process this coming year. This removes the resource burden from organisations like ours.
So our diverse region presents challenges for providing equitable and inclusive transport options. Investment in community transport addresses some of the inadequacies in our community, our current modes of transport, especially for those who are disadvantaged, as it empowers the community to be responsive to the community's needs. I just wanted to give you a break from speakers today because I know it's been a long day, so we wanted to show a video that illustrates the benefits of community transport. Waka Eastern Bay is an example of a service that fulfills the important role of providing accessible transport options to members of their community, and this operating model is just one example of the many forms that community transport can take. Back and you can enjoy this for 5 minutes. Sound though. Oh. Any thoughts, Bryce?
Seeing people connect, seeing people being able to stop worrying about how they're going to get to that specialist appointment. There's definitely a huge gap of transport that's affordable, that's regular. We are filling the gaps where there's not another service available, but we're also a very heavily subsidised and affordable service. I'm the project manager for Waka Eastern Bay, and it's a community transport that started in March and ran a trial for 3 months, and then we opened to the public in August, and it's really been great trying to fill the gaps in the community. This project would not have been possible if it wasn't for Waka Kotahi's Innovation Fund.
There's many providers like ourselves who provide that connectivity for members of communities, young, old, people with disabilities, people who, for one reason or another, aren't able to get out and be part of a real living community.
Seatbelts on, ladies.
We put together a committee of interested people. We subsequently formed the trust, and we have developed a reliable, cost-effective and trustworthy alternative transport system. It's growing to such an extent now that we've got one 5-seater vehicle we own. We're currently leasing a 12-seater.
We try and connect them. We take them to group outings, we take them on shopping trips, we make sure they can get to their medical appointments. It's a service that goes from their front door, so they don't have to go and stand in a rainy bus stop or anything like that. And of course the buses here are very few and far between, so we're really just filling the gaps and making sure people are getting out and about.
The bus takes quite a long time. And you would be dropped at Bayfair or you'd be dropped at the hospital or whatever. But this way, the actual little coach will take you to exactly where you want to go.
And they take me to work on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday.
It gives them still a bit of independence, which is vital for him and his mother.
Again, we can do those sort of things at a very minimal cost to allow people to extend their social life, their social, outlets that they want, and have unfortunately been denied through no fault of their own, other than the fact that they either live in a rural or a more isolated community.
In the beginning we had 3 volunteer drivers, and we've grown that number to 30 now. And these are people that give their time freely. And most of the time they're a phone call away, and just amazing, amazing people. people like to give back. They see a need and they can give back to the community.
So I was sitting in my shed there for a few months back thinking what I'm going to do with myself. I got a little boat, but can't go fishing every day. So I saw in the paper Hun and Meikle advertising for drivers.
Seeing people like Nancy, who's blind, get to go places that you would normally otherwise not go. And Nancy is just one of them, How are you?
Come forward. Yep, all good.
Okay.
Now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just people out in the community that really have got no one to take them around to places that are stuck at home. So, and it's expensive getting taxis too. Whereas I think these trips cost a couple of bucks each, and they can afford that, so it's good.
Okay, thanks, bye.
It's taken a little while for people to start trusting us and our service, but as the trust is set in, the feedback we've gotten, we're just so grateful that we are making a difference in their lives. I'm sure there's so many other communities in New Zealand that feel isolated, that can't get to their appointments, that would so benefit by a service like this, and we'd love to speak to them. And we're hoping that this will just flourish, and I hope one day we'll see a fleet of vehicles.
Where will this all end? I hope it never ends. I just hope it gets bigger and bigger. But again, it comes down to funding. It comes down to like-minded people, like our volunteer drivers who are prepared to give up their time to come in and be part of the worthwhile service that we're providing for our people.
So we felt that kind of summed it up better than what we probably could in the short time we have. So we just want to speak to the next part of our submission, which is the Central Hawke's Bay Community Transport Pilot. You'll see behind me some figures shared with us from the Waikato Community Trust that illustrate that this can really work and also save money and decrease reliance on the total mobility scheme. Central Hawke's Bay, like Wairoa, is challenged with transport barriers not experienced by those living in our urban cities, including a lack of public transport and one total mobility scheme provider who is also the only taxi company in the community for the general population. The Central Hawke's Bay Older Persons and Disability Networks have for some time highlighted the barriers that vulnerable residents face in accessing transport, which connects residents to essential services, wellbeing and social appointments. A community transport working group has already been formed and has met with current formal and informal community transport providers in the community. This work highlighted that Central Hawke's Bay would benefit from a formalised approach to community transport with further opportunities for development. It has been demonstrated in other communities that community transport is a lifeline for those with transport disadvantages, especially those living in rural areas, the elderly and individuals with disabilities. The working group wished to continue this work, however, further dedicated resources are needed for this. We support the provision of a dedicated grants funded through the proposed rate charge per household for ongoing community transport provision across Hawke's Bay. We are also further advocating for the Council to include in their 2025-2026 plan funding for this trial to commence in Central Hawke's Bay.
That's, we're obviously as a collective really looking forward to working with Council going forward and appreciate all the great relationships and engagements we've had so far. But that's the end of our presentation. So if anyone has any questions, if we have any time, welcome those. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've got to say personally that's been an absolute highlight for me today. If not from the submissions, in fact even beyond, and I'm very, very motivated to explore this. So thank you for bringing those options to our attention. Do we have any questions from members of the committee?
Blown away.
I guess my question is, so from your initial engagement in Central Hawke's Bay, it's a two-part question. Do you think there is an interest, a potential viability, an option here that could work?
Yes. Yes.
Have you had any similar conversations in Wairoa?
No, we haven't. No.
It's presumably a model that can, as it has for Central Hawke's Bay.
Yes, the intention would be to develop a model that can be replicated or certainly used in other areas. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for sharing that and bringing all of that to our attention. The 9 bullet points that you put up on the slide before are all in the written submission, so we've seen those. And yeah, that community transport lead is one that really resonates with me. So again, so thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Our next submitter isn't here yet. That's the Ministry of Education.
Going to log on at
1:30. Okay.
There's another person that was.
Is anyone else here waiting to present? No. I'd just like to use this 5 minutes, and if necessary, the Ministry can wait just a couple of minutes. There's some issues that I'll be wanting the staff to cover in the deliberations report that I just wanted to give you a heads up on. I've already touched on 2. The first was whether our policy coverage and our contract KPIs are covering some of that customer experience discussion that Glenys Libby talked about. I'm wanting to learn about whether a support person that was brought to our attention by one of the submitters this morning would be viable in the current situation, or the current funding context. I'm wanting to know exactly why we decided not to continue My Way in Hastings, and within our funding envelope we needed to pivot back to the fixed routes, and what the feasibility process-wise, funding-wise or otherwise would be in pivoting back to My Way for Hastings. Is that just pie-in-the-sky dream stuff with our funding envelope, or is it something we could actually resolve to do if we were minded to in response to submissions? So I don't know what the answer to that is. I suspect it might be a fairly clear one, but I definitely want to kick the tyres on it. I'm interested in the top-up options that were raised in the last submission. How easy will these new cards, the Motu card or whatever it's called, be? It's got to be. I've tried to do this in Auckland. It's a freaking nightmare just trying to log into your own card and remembering passwords and all this sort of stuff. You just throw it away in the end, or, just go to the machine. So it's got to be. I'm interested in that being sort of seamless and easy. I want to signal that I'm going to be discussing with staff this committee recommending to both Central Hawke's Bay and the Regional Council that they partner to ensure that the next year's annual plan or the long-term plan beyond that actually fund the Central Hawke's Bay, so it's no longer subject to funding, that we recommend from our deliberations that those councils next year actually fund that and do it. So just signalling that, but it would be subject to being matched by the Transport Agency. And I'm interested in this 9 to 3 gold card thing, exactly what the setup is there. And I think that, this community transport lead and the community transport model, I really want to have some focus on that, because that just seems to me to have a great future in a highly constrained financial environment where you've got willing people working in the community. We've just got to harness it. So those are sort of some of my initial reactions of things that I'd like to see. I'll talk to Bryson Russell some more about it before the staff report comes out. Is there anything else that's burning in your minds that you want to see in the deliberations report from what we've heard today? So a bit more information on responses to.
You'll know what I'll be going to talk about, won't you? Costing of My Way in Napier. I mean, that young fella actually had Hawke's Bay on his My Way t-shirt. Do we know the cost? And
it was a cost originally. It was about 2.8 million, I think. But that might have been for both of them.
Yeah, I think both.
Just as I just think it's worth us knowing that figure, and it's sitting in the loop because it is a starting point. All the discussion, most of the presentations today, I see My Way or something similar would fix a lot of the issues that are people coming with. There wasn't a lot of. I didn't think it was that much criticism on the bus routes we're looking at. No. It was what goes with it, and I hate harping it. And when my phone went off, it was actually Frank Sinatra singing My Way. So I don't know how that happened, but it's out there.
Phones will listen to you.
Yeah, exactly. Lexus is.
All right.
Change
okay.
your favourites, Keith.
So that's a head up on some of the issues that are burning in my mind. If you've got any others, share them with the staff before you go, so that the deliberations report's got that information you need and no one's taken by surprise. We have, I believe, is that James?
Kia ora, yes.
And Reid. Welcome.
Kia ora. Thank you for inviting us to attend.
Thank you for being flexible in being able to come forward a little bit. We had a couple of submitters do a no-show. And in exchange for our eager willingness to hear from you, I'm going to ask for a deal. And the deal is that after this session, or when it's posted on YouTube, you please go and watch the presentation from the Catholic Diocese of Palmerston North, which was at around 11 a.m. So we'll hear from you, and I just would really be keen that you go and watch what we heard from them, because it's totally relevant to what you're about to share. Thank you.
Of course. Kia ora. Thank you. So, yes, thank you for inviting me to this council meeting. My understanding of what I'm presenting on is broadly our submission on the public transport plan, but I think the easiest way to frame this up, I'm anticipating a few questions, so I'll try and keep my framing to a minimum. But I thought to begin with, I'd just like to talk a little bit about how school transport as funded by the ministry operates, how we're funded and for what. And then a little bit about how we interact with councils, and particularly also to acknowledge that we have a very good working relationship with officers in your council as well. So the through Vote Education, the government appropriates an amount to spend specifically on school transport assistance. It's not only daily buses, it's a range of things all the way, including something we call CESTA, which is a specialised transport for children with high and complex needs. We bulk fund some schools, and we also pay some parents directly what we call a conveyance allowance. So we have a chunk of money that's set aside. In the last year, it was about 260 odd million, so it's not a trivial sum, and that makes us about the second largest effectively public transport operation after Auckland Transport. So quite a big operation, but it all of our work is done in rural or peri-urban areas. The system originated from the 1920s. I won't go into the long history, but it was based on the consolidation of school networks. The purpose at the time was to fill a gap where there was a concern that parents may not be able to meet their obligation to get children to school. Now, since the 1920s, a few things have changed, of course, and the operating environment is very different. Primarily, pretty much everyone has private cars, public transport networks have grown, and so on. Nevertheless, the rules of our appropriation, so when the government appropriates money under the Public Finance Act, we are required to spend the money we're given in line with the policy. And our policy, as some of you will have become aware of in recent times, has three main strands. One is that there's a distance criteria. We're not going to take children who are closer than a certain distance to school. One is to do with managing the integrity of the school network. We won't put on services to take children past their nearest school. All of these things have some subtleties around the edges, but broadly that's one of the main criteria. And the third is that we will not operate where there are what we call suitable public transport alternatives. And of course, it's that last criterion that has the greatest bearing on our interactions with councils, with regional councils who are typically public transport authorities, because the expectation in the system is that obviously public transport networks are designed and funded to meet demand within the particular catchment that the regional council serves, and those networks typically expand as the demand increases. And so the expectation is that where we see improvements to public transport networks, we will remove our services. This is because the government doesn't want to see funding for services duplicated. So in the Hawke's Bay area, of course, you'll be aware we've been going through reviews, and this is our routine work, which allows me to provide assurance that we are meeting our obligations, our legal obligations, by spending our money according to our policy. Of course, those reviews can be contentious, particularly people who have adjusted their lives to a particular level of service and have an expectation are often pretty disappointed to discover that for reasons of policy we need to retract. Nevertheless, those are the operating conditions and parameters we have. In order for me to keep my staff safe and legal, I need to give them clear guidance on what the policy is. They all know it, of course, but we have to also make sure we apply that policy consistently across the country. So I think that's probably enough of a summary of our operation. Again, I want to reiterate that whenever we are going into an area for a review, we reach out to our colleagues in council transport and make sure that we are at least aware of what each other is doing. And where possible, when we're going to implement changes, we try and align with public transport systems to minimise disruption. Of course, it doesn't mean that we can mitigate all of that, but we do our best. So, yeah. Would anyone like to ask any questions?
Yes, a question, and thank you. We've had that message from Reid before, loud and clear, about the strictures of your policy. You noted, though, James, that a lot has changed since 1924. The one thing that hasn't changed is your policy.
That's right.
So we wrote specifically to the Minister, and we impressed on the Minister just how serious, socially and economically, the implications of that slavish and rigid and flexible adherence to your policy are. We heard about that again today. Can you advise us on what we need to do to get that policy changed so that our kids aren't falling between the two funding stools of cuts in public transport funding and cuts in Ministry of Education funding? I know you're the officials that need to drive this, but what do we have to do to get our kids safely to school in Hawke's Bay?
Yeah, well, firstly, that you make a very useful distinction, but I want to make sure that it's even clearer. So there are two questions in there. One is, slavish, rigid adherence to policy. That's the sort of directed at my group and their operations. My answer there is that that's their job to slavishly adhere to policy. That's not because we have a particular fondness for the policy. It's because that's the operating legalities for the group. I don't have staff that I have empowered to make discretionary decisions because on a network of 1,400 plus routes, 600 tech routes, if we make a decision to nudge a line somewhere to be a little more accommodating in one place, then naturally everyone across the network will demand exactly that same thing. At that point, we're doing what is just sort of known in government circles, you might know it too, as making policy by stealth. That's not a thing we'll be doing. So your second question is, so is there an opportunity to change the policy? And the answer is that any government can direct us to look at the policy, and we are always available to provide advice to our ministers and to their cabinets about not only the kinds of things that we think might be more rational, might serve communities better, but we'll also advise them on the potential cost implications. So I think you talk about writing to the Minister. That's exactly what you should do and what you should impress. Yeah. So effectively, the government, and if we think about the language the current government uses, and it's quite a useful language to get to understand what a useful way to approach the government would be has a social investment lens that it puts on things. That is to say, it doesn't object to spending of public funds, but it does want to know what's coming out the other end and to see why that is a benefit that the government should be investing in. So you have urged me to listen to the submissions of some of the Catholic schools you heard from earlier today. I've had a brief summary of those, and I have a strong sense of what they'll be saying and why they're saying it, and I hear that. What I need to do is be clear about the limits of my discretion, so I don't give people to understand that I'm somehow the bestower of a good here, a withholding there. The way I can administer a system fairly is to administer it consistently. It puts us, I'll be frank, between a rock and a hard place. We are fronting this. I've come from a meeting this morning with iwi and Tai Tokoro, where we've fronted the same sets of questions with compelling local examples about how communities are impacted. I'm entirely happy to hear those stories, but it's not within my discretion to solve those problems. So the answer is find a sympathetic ear, make a case that explains and clearly lays out what benefits the government would have from a review of the policy, and we would absolutely lean in. I would say that in the past we've advised every government, 2 Labour governments and 1 National, when they've said, gosh, we spend a lot of money on school transport and it does seem to only produce upset. What do we do about it? And we've always said, Minister, you can direct us to look at the policy. Now, we have made, we've done some preliminary work around that, but quite often other priorities intervene and that work gets deprioritised. Prioritised partly, I think, because it is quite complex and you can't be assured that tweaking one part won't have an unintended consequence somewhere else. All of you will be very familiar with the complexities of network planning, so I won't lecture on that. But those are the kinds of things that need to be taken into account.
I understand that, James. Look, I'm going to go over time on this. The Minister's letter says to me, while the Ministry's policy settings and eligibility criteria set clear limits on the level of assistance they can provide, it says public transport authorities have the flexibility and remit to put services to meet the needs of their communities. It really just throws the mandate back onto us. And yeah, look, I'm grateful, and I know there has been dialogue between our staff and yourselves to try and make this work as well as it can, but can we please work together? This policy's got to change. We asked for it to change. The Minister's letter does not speak to that. So, yeah, sorry for the frustration. I'm only speaking.
No, I hear it, but I don't do you any service by suggesting that somehow I have the mandate to solve the problem you're putting in front of me. I hear it, and we do need direction from ministers about the advice they want to receive.
Yeah, I think there's actually a nationwide local government initiative to try and get this sorted out with the ministry. So hopefully there is a future ahead for us. Because otherwise,
we will absolutely lean into those conversations. It has been raised. You're right. It's there's been some moves you'll be aware of, and when those come up, we make sure our minister knows, and our minister is comfortable for us to engage with councils on those discussions. So. What can I say about that? I have no idea where that will go, but I think it's a productive first step and a useful conversation to open up.
Well, thank you very much for being here today and reiterating the position and giving us an opportunity to reiterate some of the frustrations that are being...
I do understand it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions before these 2 gentlemen get back to their busy lives? Thank you very much indeed, Reid and James. Good afternoon.
Kia ora. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think that's the end of the submitters that we have here today. I think they heard from us as much as we heard from them. Anyway, that letter, could that be... I've got the letter here that Minister Stanford sent back. If that could be shared with members of the committee, please. If it hasn't already, if you haven't seen it, it was 10 December 2024. The letter's both ways. then just what do we do about it? All right, I don't think there's any other submitters here, so we might ask Happy to close with karakia and send us safely on our way.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, everyone. Been a great meeting today, awesome. And by the way, have a great weekend. Okay, kīnua tātou. A te atua tātou e manaki e te aki. Kia rahi roto tōna rangi Māori e tēnei rangi. Me ngā rā, me heke mōne, nā reira, kia tātou katoa o te whai. O tō tātou ariki a ihu kreiti. Me te aroha o te atua. Me te whiwhinga taitanga ki te wairu tapu. Ake. Amen. Kia ora.
Thank you. Kia ora, Api. Thank you very much indeed.